The main character looks forward mysteriously and intently, covering part of his face with his hand. Against the backdrop of the starry sky and the full moon, there is a high-rise building with a neon sign written in hieroglyphs on it. A middle-aged man, in a company of girls, compliments the main character, Mr. Chen. The man and the main character clink wine glasses that are half full. A bright blush is visible on the man's face, his eyes are widened, and his mouth is slightly open in obvious surprise. Chen looks at the man with absolute calm, rejecting the compliment he gave him earlier. The man hesitated out of awkwardness and offered to drink more alcohol, claiming that Chen could rely on him and not worry about anything. Chen looks disapprovingly at his companion, who continues to drink in an attempt to distract himself. The main character looks carefully at his reflection in a wine glass and thinks about his past and his name. His reflection in the glass becomes blurry, and he confidently asserts that he is no longer Chen Hansheng, and his only joy is wine. He continues to sit on the sofa in the company of a man and several ladies, considering them hypocrites for wearing masks. Chen is introduced to Miss Zhang, who immediately notes that his wife is immensely lucky. The man points out that Chen is single and is currently an eligible bachelor, which makes Miss Zhang embarrassed. Sitting down on the sofa with the other characters, Ms. Zhang notes Chen's sophistication and high standards. She holds a business card in her hand, curious about the potential opportunity to be noticed by the main character. Ms. Zhang leans closer to him and continues to shower him with compliments, talking about the importance of balancing family and career. Chen listens to her silently, giving her a curious look after she leans against him. She carefully hands him her business card and asks him to take it. The main character looks at her with a slight smile when she is glad that he took her business card for himself. There is a bottle of alcohol on the table and several heroes offer to drink to Chen and his skills. Several cars are visible against the backdrop of the night city. They want to give the main character a ride, but he refuses, citing the fact that his house is close enough. The main character sighs heavily and approaches his car, holding his jacket in one hand and grasping the door handle with the other hand. Suddenly, Chen is distracted from the car when he hears a rather loud meow. Under his car, near the wheels, there is a small red kitten who continues to meow. Chen takes him in his arms, lamenting that the kitten was lucky that the main character noticed him and the kitten was not harmed. He lets go of the red kitten and it defiantly runs away, turning to look at the main character for the last time. In the darkness, the glowing headlights that belong to Chen's car stand out brightly. The main character himself sits peacefully with his eyes closed in his car, relaxed in the front seat. Chen opens his eyes and turns his gaze to the window of his car. On the street you can see that same red kitten with two more adult cats, his parents. Chen looks away, thinking about his own family, which he has not visited for a long time and wants to do this. He starts the car and places his hand on the gearbox, preparing to drive home. Chen sits with his seatbelt fastened and his hand reaches into his shirt pocket. Among the huge number of business cards, he sees Miss Zhang's business card with a trace of a kiss on it. He looks long and thoughtfully at the large number of business cards in his hand. After a while, in one motion, he throws away all the business cards that were previously in his hand. All the business cards scatter in a chaotic manner, falling to the ground near Chen's car. Chen starts the car, causing some cards to fly even further, and some of them he simply runs over. The main character's car moves further and further away to the song, and the business cards continue to lie on the ground. The lights of the night city illuminate the empty highway, many skyscrapers are visible in the background. Chen keeps one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting his chin, looking out the window and listening to the song. He then turns his gaze back to the road with a bored expression on his face. His hand firmly holds the steering wheel, he confidently increases the speed, following the words from the song about 500 miles. Suddenly, a huge truck drives out to meet him, blinding him, illuminating the entire street with its headlights. The main character's eyes widen in shock, horror and fear are visible in them. He did not expect this. A girl in a long dress and with a bicycle reprimands him that smoking is prohibited here. Chen closes his eyes, holding his head with one hand, which suddenly begins to hurt. He opens one eye and tries to understand what exactly happened to him and where he is. A girl in a long dress stands in front of him with a surprised expression on her face. When he does not recognize her, people in the background are surprised at his carelessness. The guy sitting on the bench coughs demonstrably, which causes confusion in Chen, who is sitting next to him. His eyes widen from total misunderstanding. it seems to him that everything that is happening is a dream. The main character continues to be perplexed by what is happening and suddenly notices something. Under the uncomprehending glance of his comrade, he notices his reflection in the poster next to the bench where they are sitting. His eyes become even larger and a bead of sweat appears on his face. He freezes in total shock when he realizes that he has been reborn. The shock on the protagonist's face became more and more. He absolutely does not understand what is happening. The girl with dark hair awkwardly looked down, maintaining her silence, waiting for at least some reaction from Chen. The main character is grabbed by the face with his hand, saying that his behavior is not like his usual behavior and this should under no circumstances be done. An unfamiliar tall guy clenches his hand into a fist and says that he hopes that the main character will have a happy future and recover from a broken heart. Han Sheng looks at him with a long, piercing and dissatisfied look. Without saying anything, he is annoyed by the stubbornness of the stranger in his words. His friend sits with him on the bench in confusion, not understanding what happened to the main character and why he is like this, and Han Sheng himself holds a cigarette in his hands, looking at the tall guy. The protagonist's facial expression becomes immensely gloomy, and he seriously and coldly asks the tall, unfamiliar guy who he is. Horror is visible on the tall guy's face from such a reaction, and he decides that he needs to leave, because the hero does not deserve such attention, and the girl just silently looks at Han Sheng in complete shock. The girl finally decides to speak up, noting that if the main character decided to ignore her, then that's his business, but she made it clear that she doesn't want a relationship now and her opinion won't change anything. The hero looks at her worriedly when she mentions that she will tell his mother about his smoking. He cannot remember who she is, but he is scared that his mother might find out about his bad habit. Han Sheng is extremely annoyed and does not understand how the girl knows his mother. His friend still looks at him with incomprehension, and the tall guy is getting more and more angry every minute. He looks ahead questioningly when they hand him a bottle of water and inform him that they will come for notification of enrollment later. Han Sheng refuses the offer, and the tall guy complains that the main character is pretending to be a tough guy out of nowhere. The girl is silent and does not understand the hero's behavior. The girl gradually reaches her hand, in which she holds a bottle of water, towards the bench, while Han Sheng watches her in surprise, but with some interest. The girl leaves the bottle on the bench and with a dissatisfied look and obvious resentment on her face, turns around and leaves, but the hero does not comment on this. The main character watches the girl and the tall guy ride away on bicycles and asks if he really confessed his feelings to her. His friend puts his hand on his shoulder and asks him to stop ignoring him, while the hero realizes that this is the girl he had a crush on as a schoolboy. Han Sheng turns his questioning gaze to the guy next to him, asking him directly who he is. His best friend, Wang Zibo, grabs him by the t-shirt shouting that he is his best friend and always smoked with him. Han Sheng says that Zibo went to Iraq, which makes his friend even more angry. They walk along a typical Chinese street, where there are many shops and three-story houses. His friend asks him not to drink so much and take the notice, and Han Sheng understands that now. On a white sign near the door, something is written in hieroglyphs. The main character is congratulated on successfully graduating from school. His teacher, with a slight smile and closed eyes, hands him a notice of graduation. His friend is surprised that Han Sheng passed the first-level exam, and the hero mentions that he also passed the second-level exam without any problems. He looks at his smiling teacher, Lao Xiu, who will die of cancer, and Han Sheng will not be able to attend his funeral because he will be abroad in the future. Wang Zibo thanks the teacher for his notice, and the main character is convinced that he really has gone back in time and suddenly he notices something. A red pack of cigarettes with gold hieroglyphs on it lies on the table next to a pen and a stack of papers, standing out as a bright spot. Han Sheng takes the cigarettes for himself under the surprised looks of the teacher and his friend and asks Lao Xiu to smoke less. He looks at the teacher, holding a pack of cigarettes in his hand and reminds him that teaching in high school is already a difficult process, and smoking will harm the teacher even more. The teacher looks at Han Sheng with obvious misunderstanding, rather even with a certain shock, clearly not expecting such words from him. But then Lao Xiu laughs lightly and tells the main character that he will smoke less in the future. Han Sheng says that he will take away the cigarettes for educational purposes, which makes his friend and teacher even more surprised. The tall guy is indignant at how such a main character could be accepted into the university, but the girl with the bob tries to defend him, saying that their conflict is a misunderstanding, but the guy will continue to be indignant because of the cigarettes. Xiao Rongyu stands next to the girl with the bob, who continues to defend Hanshen and tries to explain the reason for smoking. The guy interrupts her and calls the main character a criminal and a brawler. At this moment Hanshen and his friend appear behind him, surprised by the presence of their classmates. He approaches Xiao directly, leaning slightly towards her, which shocks the guy and girl who are standing next to each other. Hanshen asks where she is studying now. Blushing slightly, she replies that she studies at Donghai University, and Hanshen says that he studies at the nearby University of Finance and Economics. The guy next to him tries to humiliate him, but nothing comes of it. Hanshen asks what time it is, after which Xiao Rongyu looks at his watch and says that it is 5 o'clock. The main character takes her hand and asks where she bought the watch, and also hints that 0520 means I love you. The tall guy indignantly pushes him away from Xiao, accusing him of trying to reconfess his feelings for the girl, but Hanshen does not react to this. He decides to leave while the tall guy shouts irritably after him, and Xiao awkwardly clutches his notice to himself. A loudspeaker is screwed to a high pole, from which sounds similar to music are heard. The rays of the setting sun shine through the windows, illuminating an empty classroom where the Chinese flag stands out brightly on the wall. Hanshen calmly leaves the school with a notice in his hands, looking at the schoolchildren in uniform walking nearby. He looks to the side and sees a crowd of guys playing basketball and trying to throw the ball into the hoop. The schoolchildren walking ahead communicate and laugh among themselves, discussing something interesting. The main character looks at the sun, which brightly illuminates his tired but relaxed face. He closes his eyes, enjoying the sun, thinking that school is a peaceful place. Against the backdrop of a sunset sky with occasional patches of clouds, Hanshen regrets that school has come to an end. The last rays of the bright sun that illuminate the street gradually fade into sunset, giving way to night. Hanshen walks next to his best friend and thinks that for the first time in several years he has the opportunity to return home. Someone behind them calls their name, causing Hanshen and Zibo to turn around and see who it is. He sees Xiao and the girl and guy he ran into earlier at school. He is unhappy that he sees them again. Xiao rides up to him on a bicycle and says that he and his friend did not write anything in her notebook for classmates. The main character silently looks at her, slightly lowering his curious gaze down, studying Xiao. Xiao also looks at him intently, taking out a notebook for classmates from the bicycle basket, which is in the bag. She holds the notebook in her hand and hands it to Hanshen, asking him to write something as a keepsake for her. The tall guy looks at the main character with even greater irritation and dissatisfaction and expects his actions. He demands that Hanshen write something nice instead of looking at Xiao, who is slightly blushing. Xiao warns Hanshen to stop staring at her, but the main character makes an excuse by saying that he is only looking at the notebook. He opens the notebook for his classmates and begins to look at what was already written there earlier. The notebook is filled with wishes. His attention is drawn to a poem by William Yeats, which Gao Jiaoyang wrote and passed off as his own. Xiao points his pen at the blank sheet of paper in the notebook and demands that Hanshen write something instead of reading the entire notebook. After this, Hanshen decides to give the notebook to his best friend so that he can write first, but his friend has not yet figured out what to write and is therefore embarrassed. Blushing, his friend writes a wish to Xiao that she becomes more and more beautiful with age. The notebook returns to the hands of the hero and Xiao writes at least something about it, but other than the wish to remain young, he cannot come up with anything. After thinking a little, the main character begins to leisurely write down his wishes in Xiao's notebook. He writes her a short poem with a play on words. Xiao reads it, but the tall guy makes fun of him, and the girl with the bob finds the poem unique. Xiao looks attentively and thoughtfully at the notebook and notes that the verse is written quite well. She notifies the hero that she will not tell his mother that he smoked, and the tall guy urges her home, citing the fact that it will soon get dark. They watch the group leave, and his friend is indignant that Hanshen forced him to sign the notebook first. The main character teases him with words about his sympathy for Xiao, which his friend immediately denies. They walk together, and the main character suggests going to McDonald's tomorrow, which his best friend is very surprised by. Hanshen explains the choice of day by saying that he has a family dinner tonight. Wang Zibo looks at the main character and asks if Hanshen can skip this dinner. Hanshen turns into an alley and leaves his friend alone, saying that he does not understand anything. His friend looks at him with incomprehension and follows him with his gaze without saying a single word. The main character walks along a narrow alley, which is illuminated by a lantern and signs of various establishments. In the light of the lantern, Hanqing remembers various moments from his childhood, for example, where he and his mother lit sparklers. He also remembers how, as a child, he came home in a dirty school uniform, and his mother scolded him for it. Or how, as a teenager, his mother asked him to take food with him, but he refused this kind deed. Hanqing remembers sitting late into the night with a huge mountain of textbooks, doing his homework. The main character remembers the phone that always lay next to him when he did his homework. He remembers a middle-aged man from the club complimenting him in the future. The main character thinks about his childhood, adolescence and his future, which he already knows. He stops near the red door, which is closed behind a metal fence. He looks at this door and stands motionless. On the sides there are red posters on which something is written in black hieroglyphs. A slight smile plays on his lips, and a lonely light bulb illuminates his face as he stands in the entrance. He raises his hand to the door, frozen with indecision, debating whether to knock or not. Hanqing stares at the door, weighing the pros and cons before knocking. At some point, he is overwhelmed with determination, and he loudly knocks on the door, demanding that his mother open it. His mother suddenly throws the door open, unhappy that he screams so loudly and always forgets his keys. Hanqing smiles mischievously and says that he wanted to call his mother, and she notes that he is also a talker. His mother closes the door, and Hanqing complains that the house is hot and he needs to turn on the air conditioner, while he wonders where his dad is. He takes the air conditioner remote control in his hands, and his mother reports that dad is still at work and Hanqing is able to deal with the air conditioner on his own. Mom hands the main character a plate with several slices of watermelon, which is why Hanqing is surprised and freezes. He begins to actively eat and thank his mother, and she tells him to eat calmly and not be distracted. While he eats on the couch, his mom asks him to take a shower later and put his university admission papers on the table. Hanqing happily eats the watermelon, smiling, and catches himself thinking that the watermelon still has the same familiar taste. In a high-rise building, in several apartments, the lights are on in the middle of a dark night. The main character's mother holds the university acceptance notice in her hand. She smiles proudly and is glad that now there is a student in their family. Hanqing stands in the bathroom and hears the plans for his future life that his mother has already made, thinking about his graduation from university and grandchildren. The main character smiles ironically, looking in the mirror, knowing that his mother will not see her grandchildren for the next 35 years. He thinks that he needs to somehow send his father away, then he will not have problems with money for normal development. The main character is distracted from his thoughts by the noise coming from the living room of his apartment. Hanqing happily comes out of the shower, noticing that his father has already returned home. The protagonist's father stands in the living room and unbuttons his shirt, simultaneously confirming his return. Despite his obvious fatigue, something important catches Hanqing's father's attention. His father picks up the air conditioner remote and adjusts the temperature to keep his family comfortable. Looking at the air conditioner, Hanqing notes how caring his father really is. The protagonist's angry mother bursts into the living room with her son's jacket and a pack of cigarettes, accusing the latter of smoking. Hanqing tries to justify to his parents that the teacher gave him cigarettes for successfully passing the exams, but the mother does not believe him and accuses the father of lack of attention towards his son. The father says that it is too early for Hanqing to smoke, and the mother adds that the father should also smoke less and it's time for them all to sit down at the table. Weak light is visible only from one apartment, which dilutes the darkness of the moonlit night. The main character's mother and father are sitting on the bed, and she asks to give her son money to take with him to university, and the father says that he should just let his son go. The mother looks at her husband with concern and complains that with age her son began to listen to her less, although his parents always encouraged his ideas. The father notes that their son may not be the best student, but his intelligence will not let him fall and they need to support him. Hanqing's mother listens carefully to everything her husband says regarding their son's future. She looks away and sighs, lost in her own thoughts about her son. It's beginning to dawn on an ordinary Chinese street. The street lights are still working and in the background you can hear Hanqing's mother realizing that he has grown up. On the bedside table in the main character's bedroom there is an alarm clock that signals that it is time for him to get up. Hanqing lies mindlessly in his bed, partially covered with a blanket, thinking about something of his own. He turns his gaze to the alarm clock, which stands peacefully on the bedside table. He then looks around the room, especially the manga bookshelf, and realizes that he is stuck in his past. A strong stream of water flows from the bathroom faucet in the wash basin. The mother's voice notes that Hanxing got up early today. The main character calmly brushes his teeth and looks at his tired mother, saying that he is hungry. His mother yawns and says that he can buy his own breakfast, and she will go to bed, because sleep is the most important thing. Hanxing doesn't say anything, but thinks that this is clearly not the way to raise your child. The main character stands near a street food stand in a playground and asks the price of an egg pie. After the seller's answer, he is mentally surprised at such a low price and asks for 2 pies for him and wonders where the payment code is. The seller looks at him in total bewilderment and does not understand what code he is talking about. The main character seems to get an electric shock when he realizes that it's 2002 and you can't pay with phones. Hanxing realizes that he has no money with him, his mother left him nothing, and the seller asks if he will buy pies. The main character refuses and quickly comes up with an excuse that the pies are harmful because his grandmother told him so. He goes home disappointed, mentally complaining that the payment system and life in the past were extremely inconvenient. Hanxing stops abruptly and distracts himself from his thoughts, paying attention to something in front of him. Xiao Rongyu is running in a tracksuit, clearly out of breath from a long run. Hanxing calls out to Xiao, who immediately turns her attention to the protagonist when he calls her. She looks in surprise at Han's hen greeting her, absolutely not expecting to see him now. Xiao looks at him and wonders what he's doing here so early, because it's only 6:30 in the morning. A thought flashes in her head, but she does not have time to bring the idea that came into her head to the end. Han Shi greets her, but she quickly interrupts him and says that she knows why he is there. Xiao puts her hands on her hips and repeats once again that she doesn't want a relationship now. The main character freezes in frustration, not expecting such a conclusion from the girl. Xiao blushes and suggests that it was precisely in order to watch for her that he got up so early, and Hanxing finds this idea absolutely ridiculous. Xiao looks at the main character with his arms crossed and asks him if he was trying to get her attention by ignoring her yesterday, to which Hanxing remains silent. He stands awkwardly and listens to Zhao's tirade that he is a good guy, but she doesn't need a relationship and only by graduation they will be able to discuss this, and the main character notes to himself that this is precisely why they are not dating. Still dissatisfied, Xiao says that she doesn't want to be distracted, but thinks to herself about the promise she made to herself throughout school that she would not have a relationship, and the same goes for university. Xiao asks him not to comment on anything, because everything is clear, and Hanxing agrees with her and says that she is smart. The main character invites her to breakfast where they can talk, which surprises Xiao. She embarrassedly notes that she should invite him, because he helps her a lot with her studies. Hanxing agrees with her and suggests meeting her at a shop near the police station that has soy milk and fried beans, saying it will be delicious. Near the diner, with a bright yellow sign, there are several police officers and ordinary passers-by. Zhao's acquaintance greets her, and she happily and politely greets him back while the main character enjoys his favorite food. Uncle Zhang reprimands him that Hanxing eats too much and does not understand the harm of overeating, and Xiao looks at him questioningly. While eating another dumpling, the main character claims that he will be in perfect shape until he is 35, while Xiao skeptically asks how he knows this. Hanxing explains to her that a few days ago he met a fortune teller, so he knows his future for sure and continues to eat. He said that he will be rich and successful, but, unfortunately, without a wife, because he does not have a marriage line, to which Xiao blushes. Xiao exhales indignantly and says that this is nonsense, because men quickly change opinions and feelings. Hanxing says that a fortune teller taught him how to tell palm fortunes, explaining that each palm pattern is unique and shows a person's destiny, and he notes that the buns made by the owner or his wife will be different. He says that the owner's buns are smooth, but his wife makes them with folds. Xiao is skeptical of such a statement and confidently says that it is nonsense. Xiao then turns his puzzled and slightly awkward gaze towards the owners of the diner to watch them work and make the buns. She watches as the owner and his wife make the very buns that Hanxing is talking about, trying to grasp the details of this process. The girl pays attention to the board on which the buns lie and sees that they really have completely different textures and shapes. Xiao watches this with shock, and at this time the main character notes to himself that she lacks basic knowledge about baking, because the shape of the bun depends on its filling, and this is the whole secret. He attracts Xiao's attention and extends his hand to her, which causes the girl to turn away from the owner of the diner and his wife, stopping to watch the cooking process. With a malicious expression on his face, Hansheng thinks that with the help of fortune-telling, one can confuse a person who has not understood himself and invites Xiao to tell fortunes. Xiao immediately suspects that there is something fishy here and asks what he is up to, but he says that there is nothing like that, just fortune-telling. After thinking for a while, the girl finally decides to trust him in the matter of fortune-telling. Hansheng looks at her hand and explains the meaning of the patterns. According to Confucianism, for example, if the lifeline is long, then you will be healthy and happy. Xiao blushes slightly at this statement, not expecting such serious words from the main character. He marks a line of wisdom on her hand, saying that she loves to fantasize and also that she will be happy. He calls the marriage line confusing. She needs to stay away from guys who run around her and she needs to be careful. He takes a dramatic pause and says that he seems to have figured out who her ideal husband is, which makes her surprised. He takes her hand and tells a blushing Xiao that her ideal husband is right in front of her. Indignant, Xiao pulls her hand away, and the main character quickly thanks her for breakfast. The main character walks relaxedly towards the exit of the diner, preparing to go home, and Xiao asks her to wait. On the way out, the diner owner's wife looks at him with a piercing gaze of obvious suspicion. He tells the owner's wife that a girl paid for him, and at that time a policeman enters the diner. The policeman notices him and turns around, looking carefully at the main character. The hero holds a toothpick in his mouth and looks questioningly at the policeman in response. Hansheng leaves the diner and the policeman seems familiar to him, perhaps a friend of his parents. Xiao and the policeman are talking behind him, and the diner owner's wife looks disapprovingly in the hero's direction. He turns around in complete confusion, trying to comprehend what exactly is happening. The diner owner's wife starts talking to the policeman and points her finger at Hansheng. The policeman suddenly turns around and looks at the main character along with the wife of the diner owner. The policeman's eyes narrow in anger and dissatisfaction when he sees Hansheng. Hansheng seems to be shocked by the realization, and he falls into stupor and shock. He says goodbye to Xiao, saying that he urgently needs to go home because he has work to do. The main character suddenly starts running, realizing that this policeman is Xiao's father. Early morning, a double-decker, blue bus stands at the stop of the Gangcheng bus station and is gradually filled with passengers. Hansheng and his best friend discuss the difference between girls in university and high school, and the fact that unlike school, university is a student's choice of study. The main character is unhappy that his friend is asking him too many questions, but then his friend mentions that he saw Xiao. As soon as he mentions this, Hansheng looks out the window, and his friend notices that he immediately became interested in the topic. From the window, he watches the picture of Xiao standing next to his father, near the open hood of the car. His friend says that Zhao's father's car broke down, and the main character thinks that he hasn't seen her since the confrontation with her father at the diner. Xiao notices that someone is watching her and therefore turns her head towards her observer. She turns away with displeasure when she sees Hansheng, and from such a reaction the main character falls into a stupor. The bus driver asks if everything is okay with the captain and he says that the car broke down and he wanted to give his daughter a ride to the university. The bus driver offers to give Xiao a ride since he doesn't care on the way to her destination. The police captain's attention is drawn to a voice asking if his car has broken down. It turns out to be Zhao's former classmate, who offers to help her by giving her a ride to the university since it will keep her safe. He says that there are a lot of people on the bus and it will be easier to get to the destination by car, and the main character watches this and thinks that the captain will refuse. The captain is in a stupor from today's failures and does not trust the rich man Gao, believing that he has bad intentions. The policeman decides to ask his daughter's opinion whether she wants to go by bus or in Gao's car. The captain is waiting for his daughter's answer. At that moment Gao glows with hope and happiness. Xiao chooses to travel by bus, and the main character has no words to comment on the situation. The main character invites his friend to move forward, but he refuses. He asks his best friend to move so Xiao can sit next to him. When my best friend asks why Hansheng doesn't change seats, he says that he gets motion sickness in front of the bus. Xiao is standing in the aisle between the seats, and the main character ignores her, not noticing her presence. The main character looks out the window, and his best friend sits with his eyes closed, still unhappy. In the end, the disgruntled friend still changes seats, although he is very angry about this. The main character looks out the window and the policeman asks to keep an eye on his daughter since their universities are nearby. Hansheng says that he will definitely take care of Xiao, shocking Gao who is standing nearby. The bus rushes along the sunny highway at great speed, without making any stops. The main character's best friend is unhappy with his place because the curtain is broken and the drive is still 5 hours away. Hansheng asks the conductor to give his friend a visor since he won't be able to withstand such a long ride in the sun. The main character yawns demonstrably and says that he got up early today, so now he will sleep. He closes his eyes, and Xiao thinks that he is trying to avoid talking to her in this way. She turns away dissatisfied and thinks about how much Hansheng's pretense will be enough. Without noticing it, the main character rests his head on Zhao's shoulder and actually falls asleep. Zhao's father's intuition tells him that something is wrong after his daughter boards the bus. The bus also quickly continues to travel along the highway without slowing down. After some time, the bus drives onto the bridge, and in the distance a boat is visible on the water. The passengers cry that it is the Yangtze Bridge wakes up Hansheng and he, being sleepy, looks out the window. The main character is distracted from the view of the bridge and from the corner of his eye, with obvious interest, looks at Xiao. He looks at the girl carefully and notices to himself that up-close Xiao is even more beautiful than usual. Hansheng keeps a neutral expression, and Xiao asks him if he was surprised by the sight of the bridge. The main character looks away, as if ignoring her question. He then turns sharply to the girl and leans close enough to her, causing her to blush. Xiao abruptly pulls away from him, her eyes wide and her face completely red. The main character looks at her with a slight grin, asking her if she was surprised by this bridge. The girl is still in a shocked state and looks at the main character with a clear blush on her cheeks. She is very embarrassed by what is happening on the bus. Hansheng tells the girl that he has already been to this city and not only drove across the bridge, but also saw local attractions, so it's hard to surprise him with anything. The girl looks at him with some misunderstanding, but at the same time with interest. The main character looks out the window again, and Xiao thinks about whether he did it on purpose or not. After a while, the heroes finally arrive at the Jianye bus station and prepare to get off the bus. At the bus station there are several different buses from which people get off. The protagonist's friend complains about the heavy suitcases, while the hero himself says that he warned not to take so many things with him. Xiao herself stands awkwardly, surrounded by 3 large suitcases. She is surprised at the lack of things Hansheng has, but he says that everything is at the university, and his mother will send him the rest. The girl is surprised at the resourcefulness of the main character, realizing that it could have been done simpler, and Hansheng calls her simple-minded. He gives her advice on how to get to her university and tells her the exact route. Xiao asks how he will get to the university, and he replies that he and his friend have already decided to take a walk in the park. The girl freezes in total shock when the main character tells her that they will see each other later. She shouts after the hero, calling him by name, which makes the hero of his friend twitch in surprise. Xiao is furious and reminds Hansheng that he promised to take care of her. She looks intently at the backs of the 2 heroes, waiting for action, and the people at the station carefully watch what is happening. The main character turns to her, noticeably nervous, and looks at the angry Xiao. He asks her not to scream. He slowly reaches out his hand to her, but she just turns away from him irritably. In an attempt to attract her attention, the main character whispers to her that they need to leave quickly before passers-by think that they are a couple. This statement infuriates Xiao even more, and she looks at Hansheng indignantly. Trying to smooth over the situation, the main character offers to accompany Xiao to the station and watch her leave. A tear rolls down the angry girl's cheek and she declares that he wants to leave her. Hansheng notes to himself that she didn't want to meet him anyway. The main character tries to calm her down and says that he will help her take her things to the station and will not abandon her. Xiao sharply bites his hand, which instantly causes deep shock in the hero. Passers-by observe the situation and side with Xiao, believing that the main character is a bandit. The entire trio of main characters sits awkwardly at a bus stop, surrounded by suitcases and packages. Hansheng's hand, which is partially hidden in his pocket, shows a fairly strong bite mark from Xiao. The girl looks guiltily at the protagonist's hand, but says nothing about it. The main character shamefully looks at the ground, believing that his reputation is ruined and everyone thinks that he is a scumbag. Xiao also feels awkward, realizing that Hansheng wants to find a girlfriend. She feels jealous. Her shoulders are slumped and she attracts Hansheng's attention by calling the hero by his name. The main character closes his eyes and sighs heavily, looking at the girl's condition. He opens his eyes and a slight smile is visible on his lips. He asks if she is angry with him. Xiao looks at him with big eyes, full of regret and tears and awkwardness. She lowers her tear-filled gaze and nods shyly in response. Hanqing says that a lost walk in the park is not a problem, but the girl disagrees with him, shaking her head. The main character's best friend invites him to accompany Xiao to the university and meet him later. His friend runs away very quickly, saying goodbye and leaving them alone with each other. Hanqing is surprised by his friend's action while Xiao sits in silence. The main character calls out to the girl, who is still crying, and asks her not to worry and to come with him. She quickly wipes her tears with her hand and agrees to go with the main character. Hanqing takes on most of the luggage, leaving Xiao to carry just one suitcase. The main character looks forward mysteriously and intently, covering part of his face with his hand. Hanqing slowly walks away from Zhao's dormitory, where he took her to. He takes off his glasses and, exhaling heavily, says that the troubles are over. Hanqing lowers his hand to the pocket of his pants and the edge of a white piece of paper can be seen from it. A beautiful girl gives him the hostel's phone number, saying that he can contact them at any time, while a disgruntled Xiao stands in the background. The main character holds a piece of paper in his hands and smiles contentedly, thinking that it is impossible to refuse such a thing. Against the background of the wall, a red poster with golden hieroglyphs on it can be seen, welcoming the students. Looking at the main entrance to the university, Hanqing thinks that he really missed a place that he had not been to for 10 years. Among the crowd of students walking around the campus, you can see a girl with long bangs who is in a hurry somewhere. The girl suddenly bumps into Hanqing's shoulder, causing the piece of paper he was given earlier to fall out of his hands. With noticeable irritation, the main character calls out to the one who caused him inconvenience. The girl immediately begins to apologize to Hanqing, and he can't help but notice that she is immensely cute. The hero smiles in response to her apology and says that there is no need for it. The girl thanks him and very quickly runs away from the scene of the collision, which causes the main character to be shocked. Hanqing picks up the fallen piece of paper and tries to remember the girl he just ran into. The main character continues to walk and thinks about how quickly this stranger ran away. Two people are sitting at the table, an elderly man and a happy-looking girl. When Hanqing approaches this table, he is asked if he is a student and Hanqing confirms this. The girl sitting at the table turns out to be his classmate, whose name is Hu Linyu. He knows that she will be a curator for 4 years. Then the girl introduces the elderly man and says that this is the teacher, curator Gui Yungyun. The teacher tells him to fill out the information and go to the dormitory. Hanqing finishes filling out the paperwork as a crowd of students can be seen gathering behind him. The girl notifies Hanqing that he will live in the 3rd building, in the room. The main character thanks her and thinks that he wants to try to become a curator, like her. Against the backdrop of various university buildings, the main character says goodbye to the girl and the teacher, leaving them. Hanqing carefully looks at the various female university students, noting that they are much more beautiful and attractive than the schoolgirls. Looking at the girls, he understands what attracts the attention of other guys and why they go to this university. He sighs heavily, and carrying the bag in his hands, thinks about the fact that he needs to first earn money before trying to find a girl. The information board is filled with various inscriptions and papers attached to it, where it is difficult to find a specific advertisement. The main character finally finds what suits him and hopes that it will help him earn money in the future. The sunset sky slowly turns into night, and the lights come on in the dorm where the main character lives. The main character walks tiredly along the corridors of the dorm, thinking about how many people there are, and he was late while he was going to get his things. Hanqing holds his things and smiles happily, thinking about how long it has been since he was in this room. He puts his hand on the door, opening it slightly, allowing light to enter the corridor and thinks that his neighbors are still the same. He smiles and happily greets his neighbors, asking if he was the last one to arrive. He attracts the attention of 3 people at once, but one of them is especially happy to see him. Hanqing introduces himself and tells what province he is from, and the guy in the yellow t-shirt happily shakes his hand. His neighbors are Yang Shichao from the north of Liaoning, Guo Xiaoqiang from Sudong and Dai Zhenyu from Jibei. Attention turns to the remaining 2 neighbors, Li Damon from the east of Guangdong and Jin Yangming from Jianyu. Dai Zhenyu is completely shocked that Yangming has the latest model of Motorola, and Yangming proudly confirms it. The main character is glad that they have remained the same and have not changed at all. Yang offers cigarettes to the main character, saying that he is the oldest and Dai is the youngest. The main character listens carefully and invites everyone to number themselves according to age. When the youngest is given cigarettes, he feels awkward, but thanks. Lee Damon and Jin Yangming refuse cigarettes, even though it is a sign of politeness. The oldest guy is surprised at their refusal, and the second guy says that there are few types of cigarettes in the hostel. Yangming says that these are very cheap and bad cigarettes and they are of poor quality. He begins to make recommendations regarding cigarettes, since there are lighter and more flavorful options. The eldest becomes embarrassed, and he says that in his city he only smoked these cigarettes, but had not heard of others. Hanqing smokes calmly and thinks about how nice the students are that they can even argue about such a simple topic. The main character looks forward mysteriously and intently, covering part of his face with his hand. Hanqing, with a cigarette in his mouth, turns away and thinks about the 4 years of training ahead. He looks displeased at the dorm door and thinks that for 4 years everything here has stunk. His roommates hear the noise and turn towards the source of the sound in surprise. They ask what Han's hen is up to, and he says that they need to keep the room clean. The eldest suggests making the hero the head of the room, and the others praise his decision about cleaning. His roommates discuss how much of a responsibility he will have to be responsible for sleeping, eating, and even resolving conflicts. Hanqing says that he will have no problem accepting the position and his roommates look at him with surprise and admiration. Against the backdrop of a hostel at night, words of praise are heard towards the main character for his responsibility and courage. Morning comes and the sun shines brightly, illuminating the hostel and the surrounding streets. In the morning, the main character wakes up to the sound of Yangming's phone, which is too loud. Damon tells Han's hen that he needs to go to class today, so he needs a uniform. The main character's eyes widen in realization and he suddenly realizes something important. He jumps out of bed and says that this is the time to meet the girls from the group. Against the background of the open door, several students dressed in camouflage can be seen. In the class there are a huge number of girls dressed in camouflage who communicate with each other in small groups. The main character says that his classmates are not very beautiful, and Yangming mentions that he saw one very beautiful girl. The main character turns to his roommates and invites them to go meet girls. Several of his roommates are embarrassed by this proposal and do not answer him. He confidently approaches a crowd of girls and tells one of them that a military uniform suits her. For girls communicate with each other and among them is his curator, with whom he is already familiar. He greets this girl and is glad that he met her again, and she recognizes him. The curator says that he is the only one out of 27 guys who dared to approach the girls. The main character introduces himself and asks if anyone from his Ganqing province is here. One of the girls with a ponytail raises her hand and says that she is from this province. Hanqing's roommates are impressed by his flirting skills and say that people like him are always popular. One of the girls says freshman year is a lot of work and she hopes he can take care of his roommates. Confidence is visible in the eyes of the main character and he says that he needs to help the teacher manage the group. He sees the girl he bumped into yesterday and asks the curator if this girl is from their group. Who says that it is and she forgot to introduce her. The stranger blushes deeply. The curator says that the girl's name is Shinyuchu and she is her roommate. The girl first hides behind Hu's back, and then leaves completely, and the curator asks not to comment on this. Hu explains that this girl has no parents, her grades are low and she is studying on credit. The main character remembers that Shen was a diligent, smart student, but she always saved a lot. The main character recalls a moment from the graduation ceremony of undergraduate students at this university. That day, Shen borrowed an incredibly beautiful dress from someone and shocked the entire university. The main character remembers the details of the outfit and admires the beauty of the girl. He thinks about their ties being broken in the future, but this time he won't let that happen. The main character looks forward mysteriously and intently, covering part of his face with his hand. The teacher coughs and thereby attracts the attention of the students, saying that the meeting has begun. The teacher looks carefully at the students in the audience and invites them to get to know each other. A girl with long red hair stands up and tells what province she is from. The protagonist's roommates begin to evaluate the girl, and Hanqing is perplexed by their behavior. The main character's attention is attracted by the awkward and timid voice of a shy girl. Shen stands near the board and talks briefly about himself and his home province. The protagonist's roommates are not impressed with the girl, but Hanqing knows what is hiding under that mask. The teacher talks about the need to choose a headman, as well as a representative of the second group. The eldest among Hanshin's comrades invites him to become a prefect, and the second roommate says that he will be able to help his friends. The curator of the group, who looks after them and declares that they have neither shame nor conscience. She concentrates and thinks that she needs to try harder because there are competitors. Who turns to the shy girl and tells her to ignore guys because they are stupid. Shen is very embarrassed by Hu's words and blushes, feeling even more awkward than usual. Against the backdrop of a clear sky, the teacher's orders are heard, which must be followed unconditionally. A man in military uniform declares that one of the heroes needs to cut his hair because it does not comply with the regulations. The outraged student defends his appearance and says others have long hair too. Some students are wondering if they too will have to cut off their hair, which is causing some girls to become hysterical. The student asks Hu to clarify this information with the teacher. Hansheng and his friend walk around the stadiums, while the girls decide to defend their right to wear long hair. The main character sees Hu running away and decides that he needs to show who the real leader is. He calls out to the teacher and asks what he is doing, which immediately provokes a reaction from the military instructor. The main character stands with his hands in his pockets, while his comrades look at him in puzzled shock. The main character introduces himself and says that he is a student of the second group of public administration. The teacher holds scissors in his hands, but the main character asks to put them aside so that there are no problems. The teacher looks at him with a scary look and says that long hair is not allowed in military training, which scares absolutely everyone. One of the protagonist's comrades begins to be indignant, but the latter asks him to shut up. Hansheng explains that the instructor was invited only for training and nothing else. He asks the instructor what his boss would think if he saw him with scissors. The instructor falls silent, and Hansheng thinks that the instructor is too afraid of the authorities to object. He questions whether students are not allowed to have long hair, but if such a rule exists, he will shave first. The instructor remains speechless and confused, not knowing what to say in response to the student. After a pause, the main character suggests wearing caps so that their hair does not bother them and does not distract them during classes. The instructor exhales heavily, but says that this time the students can go calmly. The main character asks his friend to apologize, to which he begins to be indignant. Through simple manipulations, Hansheng still makes his comrade think about an apology. Chenglong awkwardly approaches the instructor and, without looking him in the eyes, apologizes. The instructor closes his eyes and clears his throat awkwardly, thinking about something, and then begins to form a group. The girls are grateful for the courage of the protagonist, and some of them are even interested in him. Dissatisfied, Hu takes Shen by the hand and begins to lead her away from the stadium. The main character asks his comrades to form a line, urging them on. The instructor calls out the main character by name and surname, clearly preparing to say something. The teacher says that the main character smoked and thereby broke the rules, and therefore he must run 10 laps. The main character becomes gloomier than a cloud, and one of his comrades laughs at this situation. The main character says that one of his comrades also smoked, so he must run 5 laps. The instructor decides to punish both, so the main characters are forced to run 10 laps. Both heroes are incredibly tired from running, but one of Hanshin's friends praises him for arguing with the instructor. The main character is annoyed and denies the argument, blaming Chenglong for not being able to remove his hair. To make amends to the main character, Chenglong offers him his help at any time, as well as dinner. At this time, Hu decides to give ice cream to her classmates, and they thank her. The girls eat ice cream and discuss Hu's desire to become the main one, which is why she bribes people like that. One of the girls says that Chen seems like the best option, but another girl says that it will be difficult to discuss issues with the guys. One of the girls, without thinking twice, says to vote for Hu, and the main character understands that it is difficult for girls to vote for him. He watches the instructor and the teacher stand in the distance and discuss something of their own. Hansheng smiles mysteriously and decides that he will have his own way to achieve what he wants, using more influential and important people for this. The teacher asks the instructor to notify him immediately of any problems and offers dinner as an apology. The teacher sighs heavily, clearly not expecting such a situation with the instructor. The teacher is pulled out of his thoughts by the voice of the main character, who offers him a cigarette. The teacher takes a cigarette and asks Hanshen about the conflict, and the main character confirms that the conflict has been resolved. The teacher praises him for his initiative, but does not have time to finish as his phone starts ringing. The main character listens carefully to the conversation and understands that the teacher has personal problems and is overwhelmed with work. The voice on the phone shouts at the teacher that he must come and help, otherwise he may never come again. The teacher looks at the phone in shock, and the main character asks if his wife called the teacher. Hanxing offers his help and says that he can take the teacher's daughter, although the teacher has doubts. Hanxing insists on his help, but the teacher is afraid that he does not know the city, but the hero assures him that he knows his way around this city and has relatives here. After thinking for a while, the teacher asks if the main character knows where Golu Kindergarten is. The main character immediately names the required route and even describes the area. The teacher asks if he lived nearby and the main character says that he did. Hanxing asks the teacher to contact the kindergarten teacher and also says that he will show his student ID to verify his identity. The teacher gives the main character a phone and says that the meeting will end no later than 7 o'clock. Hanxing takes the phone in his hands and confidently says that the teacher can rely on him. The main character turns his gaze to the crowd of students, carefully studying them. He looks at who is talking with other girls and says to herself that sometimes it is worth resorting to other means to achieve a goal. The main character looks forward mysteriously and intently, covering part of his face with his hand. Near the kindergarten you can see many parents taking their children home. The main character comes to the kindergarten to pick up the teacher's child. The teacher is distrustful of Hans Hen, and he asks to call the teacher so that he can confirm everything. The teacher calls the teacher and asks if it is true that his student is supposed to pick up his daughter, whose father confirms this. The teacher looks at the main character and says that she will ask for his number. She then turns away and continues to listen to what Father Gua is telling her. The teacher notifies the main character that he needs to name the number and the hero calls it without any problems. The teacher confirms the authenticity of the number and ends the conversation with the child's father. She apologizes for her suspicion, but Hanxing stops her and says that there is nothing wrong with it. The teacher explains to the girl that the student has come for her and will take her to her father. Hanxing asks Jiahui to come with him and kneels down to be at the same level as her. The main character asks the child to say goodbye to the teacher, which the girl does. The main characters go to KFC to have lunch and relax. Hanxing encourages the child to eat more and asks her a few questions. The girl happily eats a burger and willingly agrees to answer all his questions. He asks if she knows her teacher's number, and the girl says she doesn't know. Hanxing asks her a question about the QR code, but the girl doesn't know exactly what it is. There is an awkward pause between the main characters and the hero smiles shyly at the child. Hanxing says that it's time for them to go home, because the girl has already eaten so much, but Jiahui asks him to stay a little longer. In the light of a night lantern, the main character notifies the teacher what his daughter is conveying to him. The teacher's wife thanks the main character, and the teacher himself holds his sleepy daughter in his arms, and the main character says that there is no need for thanks. The teacher's wife gives Hans Hen fruit as a thank you and invites him to dinner, and the teacher himself offers to give the main character a ride to the bus stop. The main character smiles and thanks for the fruit given to him and the kindness shown. Near the entrance to the university you can see many students going about their business, and Hanxing sitting on a bench. He sits on a bench and smokes, and the donated fruits lie on the bench in a bag. The main character sees Xiao coming towards him and says that it's time to sleep. The girl's gaze is attracted by the fruits that lie in a bag on the bench. Xiao is happy with the fruit and asks where the main character bought them, and Hanxing says that he got them from a nearby store. The girl listens carefully and a little surprised to the protagonist's statement. She straightens her hair and asks him if he called her just to give her the fruit. Xiao asks Hans Hen not to spend so much money on her, and the main character says that she is worth it. The girl wants to say something, she is interrupted by someone who calls her name. She turns around and sees a guy with glasses who says that he didn't expect to meet her here. Everyone greets him and says that she heard that he works at the Institute of Geology of the Chinese Academy of Sciences. The guy with glasses falls silent and looks carefully at the main character. After a while, he breaks the awkward silence and asks who the main character is. Hanxing smokes and at the same time says that he is a former classmate of Xiao Rongye. He hands the guy with glasses a pack of cigarettes and offers them, but the guy refuses. The guy covers his nose because he clearly doesn't like the smell of tobacco that comes from cigarettes. He points to the folder with documents and says that he has to go so that the teacher can hand out topics to them tomorrow. Xiao explains to Han's Hen that they wanted to take this guy to the Academy of Sciences even before graduation, and one day he came to them looking for a laboratory assistant. The girl looks at the main character waiting for some kind of reaction, but the main character just continues to smoke. After a while, he still looks at Xiao and asks what happened then. The girl looks down and says that he offered her to become a laboratory assistant. The main character sighs in surprise and looks away from the girl. Xiao looks at him again and says that she did not accept the job as a laboratory assistant. The main character does not react to this in any way, which causes terrible irritation in the girl. Xiao begins to be indignant that Hanqing smokes too much and he did not have such a habit before and he should think about the future. She asks if he has any plans for the future, and the main character asks her again. Hanqing looks at the cigarette and says that he has plans to court a certain girl. Xiao blushes. Xiao asks if the girl is beautiful, and Hanqing says that in all his years he has never met such a girl. She asks what will happen if the girl rejects the main character and Hanqing says that he does not plan to give up and will wait. Xiao asks if the protagonist is interested in the opinions of the potential girl's parents, but he says that he is only interested in the opinion of the girl herself, not the parents. She blushes, and her eyes widen with deep embarrassment and a certain awkwardness. She abruptly runs away and tells the main character that she needs time to think. Hanqing looks blankly after Xiao as she runs away and scratches the back of her head, clearly shocked by her sudden change of mood. He stands still and wonders why Xiao needs to think about why he is pursuing Shinjuchu. The teacher greets the students and says that enough time has passed for the students to get to know each other and be able to choose a group leader. He states that initiative is encouraged so that every student can nominate themselves. The protagonist's friend asks him to nominate himself because he has already imagined his future if his friend becomes the headman. The girl is the first to nominate her candidacy, and one of the protagonist's friends looks at him with displeasure, thinking that he missed his chance. Hu gets up from his seat, and the teacher says that he needs to greet the candidate. Students actively applaud candidate Hu, including her neighbor Shen, who introduces herself and says that many students may know her because she helped with registration. She states that she is enthusiastic and will always help her fellow students in their studies and other matters, as well as ensure a better future for the group. The teacher thanks her for her performance, and applause is heard throughout the audience, with Shen clapping especially actively. The girl returns to her place, and the teacher thanks her for such a speech and hopes that the next candidate will adopt the same spirit. Shen looks up and sees the main character passing by, holding his attention on him longer. The main character notices her gaze and turns his attention to her, smiling slightly. Hanqing comes to the board and smiles confidently while the teacher behind him looks at him with interest. Loud applause spreads throughout the audience in honor of the main character. His roommates actively support him and wish him luck. He begins his speech with a small joke and the teacher notes to himself that this is how he defused the situation. Hanqing promises that he will communicate with each teacher before the exam, thereby helping the students and will fight for their scholarships and grants. He mentions that there is a big difference between their university and the neighboring one, so they need to discipline themselves. Shen listens to his speech very carefully, especially when he mentions that he will provide them with a good future if they choose him as headman. Finally, the hero says that students can vote for him if they believe in Han's Hen. The teacher notes that the main character has many advantages, such as organization and leadership qualities. The teacher writes the voting results on the board and the students give the last vote to Han's Hen. The teacher announces that based on the voting results, with 27 points, the main character becomes headman. The Hus are very disappointed with this voting result, and Shen tries to support her. The main character thanks everyone for their votes while his comrades praise him. Who reminds her neighbor that men are very unreliable and she shouldn't forget that. A disappointed girl walks across the university campus, thinking that everything has lost its meaning. Suddenly, the main character calls out his opponent's name, attracting her attention. She turns dissatisfied at the main character, expecting that he is going to show off his new position. Hanqing states that he wants to invite her to dinner because they need to talk. The girl blushes from embarrassment and misunderstanding and an awkward pause reigns between them. Hu asks if he decided to become a prefect to make her fall in love with him. The hero says that he just wanted to discuss the details of control with the girl. To prove his pure intentions, he offers to invite the girl to take her friend with him. Shen blushes in front of the protagonist while he says that he invited them to discuss something important. Hu states that he shouldn't expect blessings from her and her friend. The girl reminds him that a few days ago he invited the guys to dinner but ignored the girls, who gets up from her seat and leaves to get food, although Shin asks not to leave her alone with the main character. The girl blushes very much and is embarrassed, sitting in front of the main character, but he doesn't say anything. Hansheng looks carefully at the girl opposite him, as if remembering the details. The main character notes to himself both her physical qualities and beauty. Shin finally decides to look up at him, but she doesn't stop blushing for a second. The main character smiles at her in response to eye contact, which makes the girl twitch. His smile grows as the girl burns with embarrassment. Who returns to their table with a tray full of food and tells the main character the cost of the dishes. They start the meal and Who asks the main character what he wants from her and what is the essence of their meeting. Hansheng grins and says that he has something important to do with her, piques her interest. To the shocked looks of both girls, he declares that he wants to give the headman position to Who. The girl incredulously asks if the main character is really going to transfer the position to her. Who questions the adequacy of the protagonist by asking him a direct question on this matter and looks at him with some contempt. He states that everything is fine with him, but he wants to find out why she wants to be a head girl. He is interested in her motives. The girl, after thinking a little, replies that she wants to help students, but the main character does not believe her at all. Who awkwardly looks away, as if she had been caught red-handed and exposed. She says she wants to become a civil servant in the future, so she needs the experience of a prefect, which is valuable in such a job. He understands her motives and understands that she needs a career, while the girl cannot understand why he is asking this and what his true goals are. Hansheng states that he is only interested in money, to which Hu says that she has no connections. He says that thanks to this position, his influence would increase, and the girl notes that this is an excellent tool for achieving the goal. When the hero asks whether their opinions agree, the girl tries to say that she is not like that. Neighbor Who eats quietly and listens to their conversation, where the main character states that he only needs this position for a year, because he is not interested in being a headman. Shen is very embarrassed by this situation. The blush does not leave her face, so she thanks for the food and wants to leave. The main character tells her in a rather harsh tone to return to her place, forbidding her to leave. This causes the girl to go into panic mode and blush madly, and her neighbor, Who begins to actively defend her. The main character pushes a peeled plate of shrimp towards the girl and says that he bought it especially for her. The girl twitches in surprise, but the main character asks her to finish, pointing to the plate with his hand. Shen embarrassedly squeezes the pie in her hands and, blushing, mixed with panic, says that she doesn't need to do this for her. Who watches this whole situation with confusion, while the main character asks why Shen refuses shrimp. Is she really disgusted, and she cannot understand what is happening? The heroes look at her with embarrassment, misunderstanding and some kind of resentment in their eyes, not understanding her reaction. He leans towards her and takes her hand, in which she is holding the pie, and asks if it is really so tasty, and for this reason, he wants to try it, which plunges the girl into shock. Having tried the pie, the main character declares that the taste is not bad, but the girl still cannot get over the shock and looks at him with wide-open eyes. Stuttering and sweating, Shen tries to say something to the protagonist, but is interrupted by a shout from her neighbor, who calls the protagonist not a very good person. The future headman does not understand this reaction and says that they still need to cooperate, and at this moment Who is seething with rage, and her friend is burning with total embarrassment. Tilting his head slightly, Hansheng says that he has always considered the most beautiful girl in the group, whose name is Shan Yanyan. Hansheng continues to stare at Shen and says that he now understands who is truly the most beautiful in their group, while Hu says that this is some kind of strange and incomprehensible assessment. Hu says that few people know about Yuchu's true appearance and beauty, so the main character must keep everything a secret because she is very timid and her friend is afraid that she might run into bad people. Hansheng agrees to this without any problem, but asks not to look at him so closely when Hu talks about bad people, to which she replies that men all have the same thoughts. The main character thinks that he made the right strategic step and decided to continue to establish relations with the potential headman, and after a short pause he says that it is worth continuing their conversation. He offers Hu a deal in which he says that in his second year he will give up the position of prefect, but the girl asks what guarantees he can give her in this regard. The main character offers her the following plan: during the first year she can support everyone by winning attention, creating a pleasant image among teachers and students. She can also join the squad of counselors, which will help her pass the exams, who believes that the main character is trying to blame her dirty work. The hero tries to convince her that everything that belongs to him will belong to her, to which she asks what else he can promise her. Hansheng looks at her with a confident smile and says that they can split responsibilities, with her in charge of the smaller matters and him in charge of the larger ones. The girl looks at him with skepticism and asks what will happen if she refuses the deal that the hero is so actively trying to offer her. Hansheng does not fall for her provocation and says that in this case, he will work even harder so that she does not have any chances, because universities rarely change prefects. After such an attack, who has no words left and falls silent, but the main character says that he will help her in all matters and in all matters. The girl looks at him with increasing irritation and says that he is clearly lying to her and clearly demands not to do this, showing her open disgust for him. The hero tries to take advantage of his charisma and, resting his chin on his hand, says that he is always honest and sincere with everyone, looking who straight in the eyes. From such direct and intense eye contact, even the confident who blushes, as if her body is being shocked by such an attitude. The girl abruptly jumps up from the table and says that she agrees to the deal with the main character, and also tells her friend and neighbor that it is time for them to go, and her neighbor quietly agrees with her. Hansheng watches them go slowly and confidently, happy that his plan was successful and he was able to convince who to do what he wanted. From the establishment, which has a large, red sign with white hieroglyphs on it, the voices of students can be heard celebrating the end of military training. Students actively clink their glasses and drink to the bottom, while there are many different classic, Chinese snacks on the table. Gao says that Xiao needs to eat more and that they can get together more often since their classmates study at universities near each other, but Xiao rejects his concern. The protagonist's best friend from school sits next to him, with a dissatisfied face, and Hansheng himself asks him what's wrong with his mood. His best friend complains to him that at his University of Finance, there are 62 people in his group and only 2 of them are girls, and his days are more like being in a monastery. Hansheng looks at him with wide eyes and asks what about those 2 girls. Instead of answering his question, his best friend silently continues to drink, as if not wanting to not answer. Hansheng pats him on the back sympathetically, understanding his situation, and tells him to calmly continue drinking without worrying about anything. Xiao says that the university is about studying, not relationships, but the main character's best friend says that if there are available girls in her specialty, then it's better for her to remain silent. Gao invites the main character to sit closer to Xiao and asks her opinion about her, to which the main character looks at Gao in bewilderment. Hansheng lightly touches Xiao's shoulder as he reaches for the toothpicks, apologizing for his actions in the process, leaving Gao and Xiao in complete shock. Ignoring the dissatisfied cries of Gao, the protagonist's best friend, he thinks that he, too, wants to behave cheekily, like Hansheng. Xiao says that they rarely get together, so they should definitely talk about their achievements. Gao is thinking about offending Han's hen, so he asks him to start talking about achievements and successes first. Hansheng slowly lights a cigarette, waiting for a dramatic pause before giving his answer to his classmates. He blows out cigarette smoke and looks away, and then declares that he is the leader of his group. This plunges Gao into total shock. He clearly did not expect this from the main character, and Xiao looks at him with great surprise. The main character's best friend doesn't believe him either and screams that Hansheng is definitely lying. Gao tries to accuse the main character of dishonest behavior and says that someone like him definitely could not become a group leader. The attention shifts from the main character to his best friend and he is asked about his academy. He mentions that the infrastructure of his academy is not bad, that there is a restaurant there that they can go to together in the future. His classmates quietly agree. Hansheng smokes silently and thinks that his classmates are a bunch of sentimental kids who pretend to be serious people. Gao thinks about how he spent the whole evening writing about the advantages of his university and hopes that Xiao will transfer to his university after hearing what he heard. At the moment when Gao is finally asked about his university, someone calls out to the main character. Standing in front of him is who informs him that after classes begin, the group is offered to conduct various activities and asks what kind of payment he will take as a prefect. The main character says that he needs to go away to talk, and Xiao and Gao look at the girl in surprise. He informs Hu that the fee is 50 yuan per person, and despite Hu's doubts that it's too expensive, he claims that it's just right. He looks at the girl and asks her to give those 50 yuan to her friend, Shin Yuchu. For some time the girl looks at him with an incomprehensible and empty look, clearly intending to ask him a question. Then she looks away from the hero and turns her gaze to his classmates, who are sitting in a cafe and waiting for him. Ignoring the shocked Gao and the best hero's friend, she notices Xiao looking at Han's Hen in surprise, who instantly understands what exactly is happening and returns his gaze back to the main character. She abruptly takes the money from the main character and says that she hopes that the headman will feel good. Hansheng is surprised by her behavior and change of mood. The delighted Xiao gets up from the table and once again asks the main character if he is really the headman, obviously proud of him. Gao tries to belittle Hansheng's achievement, saying that the prefects are just servants and are far from being members of the student union, which he is about to join. The main character does not react to the attempt to offend him and says that he thinks exactly the same as Gao. The main character's best friend asks about his new love interest, and Hansheng asks him in bewilderment when he got drunk. His friend continues to whisper to him that in his opinion, in this way Hansheng is trying to attract Zhao's attention, but the main character asks him to remain silent. Classmates begin to say goodbye to each other, and then offer to go together to a nearby station. Against the background of the station building there are huge inscriptions made in gold hieroglyphs, and farewell can be heard in the background. Hansheng is about to leave the station, when suddenly the girl calls out to him, clearly wanting to say something. Xiao looks down as if collecting her thoughts before saying what she thinks. After a while, she turns her gaze to the main character, gathering her confidence and preparing to express her thought. She shouts loudly to the whole street that she appreciates the persistence of the main character, which attracts the attention of absolutely all passers-by. Such a loud statement unsettles Han's Hen and he, with wide open, shocked eyes, looks at Xiao. Against the background of trees, the main character lights another cigarette, with a characteristic sound. The main character sits on a bench, gloomier than a cloud, thinking that he ruined Zhao's relationship and now she considers him an extremely strange person. The action takes place during the day. The main character is on the street, near multi-story buildings. The main character approaches the office building and says that he is already there, near the Shintong Express. He looks at the warehouse workers and notes that there is no dress code here. As a result, all workers dress however they want. He decides to take matters into his own hands. The character approaches the worker and hands him a cigarette. He asks if the director of the establishment is there. He takes a cigarette and replies that Director Zhong is on the second floor. The main character thanks him for his answer. The hero goes up to the second floor and enters the office of the director of Shintong Express. The director sits at his desk in a spacious office and writes something on a piece of paper. At first he does not notice the hero. When the director turns his attention to the newcomer, he asks who he is. The main character pulls a sheet indicating the vacancy. He says he saw an offer for a part-time job. The director asks where he is from and the main character replies that he is from Kaiyuan. The boss responds to this that someone has already come from his establishment. The director pauses, but then an idea comes to his mind. He addresses the main character. The boss invites the character to go back. The hero hears him, but does not want to give up. He asks the boss a question, what he needs to do to replace that employee and get his job. Hearing this, the company director thought about the guy's proposal for a couple of seconds. He says that the main character wants to go ahead. The character thinks that such a reaction from him is a bad sign. He says he doesn't see anything wrong with wanting to take over a job because he just wants to make money for himself. The director thinks that the main character is a little strange. He says that if you look at his clothes, he lives quite well. He wonders why the main character needs work in this case. The hero hands the director a cigarette. He says that this is not a large office, and there is no point in checking the entire pedigree of each employee. The director replies that although the main character is very persistent, he cannot simply replace one employee with another. The director says that the company is doing well now and they are delivering a lot of parcels. He, the hero, replies that that is why they have no desire to change agents. The boss says that if the main character can increase the number of daily references to 100, he will give him a job. The main character thinks this is a good offer and asks the director if he has a business card. The boss takes out his card and pulls it towards the main character. He takes it from his hands. The character turns around, opens the doors and leaves, saying goodbye to the head of the company. The director returns to his documents, and after the main character leaves, he notices that he is a curious person. Further action takes place on the streets of the city. There you can hear voices inviting residents to work in the animation club. The main character walks down the street and thinks, he believes that in the future he will have to work with rich people and with many stores. Next, he thinks that at the university the easiest way to make acquaintances is to join some kind of club or trade union. He stands in a long line at the office, which is signed as the Department of External Relations. One of the students notices him and recognizes him. They are surprised that their elder came here. A pretty girl asks the hero if he came here to join the Students' Association. He smiles hesitantly and says that for their group to have a good future, someone needs to join here. Hearing this, the girls look at each other and are not sure what to say to this. They hold hands and get ready. They say that they will visit several more clubs. The heroes tell them that tomorrow he can treat them to breakfast. He bids them farewell in a friendly manner. In line, a guy notices him and is clearly unhappy. The hero notices this guy's negative reaction and cannot understand what caused it in his direction. The guy turns away and doesn't say anything, continuing to frown at him silently. An invitation comes from the commission to come in. The main character goes inside the office and stands in front of 3 people. He notices that this guy who was frowning at him is one of the judges in the office. They look at each other. The guy looks at the hero with obvious hostility. The main character wants to politely introduce himself and give his name to the commission, but he is interrupted in the middle of a sentence. The guy who had antipathy towards him says that there is no need to introduce himself, since they only recruit girls. The main character is dissatisfied with being silenced. He begins to get angry with the selection committee. The girl from the commission whispers to the guy that she doesn't remember such conditions for recruiting to the club. He replies that he will explain everything to her later. He tells the hero that their commission often resolves issues related to business and sponsorship. He believes that girls are better suited for this, and that the hero should leave and not take up the other's time. The girl nearby notes that, in fact, they had already chosen a guy to work on the commission before. The main character starts to get angry and asks the guy if this is really what everyone needs. He is surprised by the hero's open reaction to what is happening. A conflict begins between them. The audience is surprised and begins to closely follow the skirmish between the 2 guys. The committee member begins to get irritated. He thinks that every year the freshmen become more and more difficult to keep in line. He says his name, Wei Wei. He begins to calm the main character and the main character says that he is completely calm, but wants to talk to the manager. The commission is shocked by this statement. He doesn't believe his ears and asks the hero again. The main character approaches the guy and starts saying that this is strange gender discrimination. He replies that connections are best maintained by girls. The hero says that the most important thing is the correct completion of the task and not the gender of the worker. He also says that if only girls are needed here, then what is this guy doing here, and why do they need him? Those around him take the side of the main character and tell the guy to leave himself. Suddenly a man appears behind them and says that it is time for them to stop this farce since this is a club, not a bazaar. The main character turns around and looks at the newly arrived guy. He doesn't recognize him. With a dissatisfied look, the main character asks him who he is. He answers and introduces himself as the vice chairman of the student union named Swishaoli. Swishaoli comes into the office and says that if there is any problem, he can call the security. The main character calmly answers the deputy chairman that in this case it is time for him to leave. The deputy chairman asks in surprise where to go. The hero replies that he can call security himself. Swishaoli looks at the boss with bewilderment. He doesn't know how to respond to such impudence. He asks which group the main character is from and who his advisor is. The hero replies that he is the head of the second group and offers to give him his number. The vice chairman is surprised by such impudence from the freshman in his address. Then the girls come into the office and stand up for the headman. They support him and say that they invited the guys with them. The girl from the commission approaches the main character and asks him not to quarrel. She says that he has already passed the interview and now we need to wait for the result. The character calms down and smiles at the girl. He says that in this case there is no need to worry. The guy from the commission begins to complain about the behavior of the main character, about his arrogance and disregard for the club members. The main character replies that there is no clause in the rules that would prohibit freshmen from joining the club. The audience sides with the protagonist and says that if he can join, then why are the judges stopping him? The vice chairman says that all responsibility lies with him, and asks the main character if he could guarantee sponsorship with this post. The hero asks if Swa Xiaoli himself can guarantee this. The deputy answers positively with a smug look. The hero says that in this case he, too, can easily cope with this, which causes an indignant reaction from the deputy. The public sides with the protagonist and says that it is time to give freshmen the opportunity to join without relying on their gender. The deputy says they could use some help from the freshmen. He thinks that he can give the main character a chance to prove himself. He wants to compare which of them will be able to collect more sponsorship in total. The girl next to her says that Zhou Xiao has a better chance because he has experience working in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The vice chairman asks if the main character wants to participate in this financial competition. The hero confidently asks what will happen if he wins and collects more money from sponsorship. He is told that in this case, he will be able to take the place of a club employee instead of a guy from the commission. The main character readily agrees. The guy is surprised by this. He did not expect such an answer. The main character points to the people standing nearby and says that since there are many witnesses here, he cannot refuse his promise. They are given rules. At the beginning, a person is randomly selected to calculate the amount of sponsorship. Whoever collects the most sponsors will win. They are asked if everything is clear regarding the rules. The protagonist's rival responds positively. The main character is not sure how reliable the system with a random choice of a person is, but he confidently agrees to the conditions. The main character's opponent was assigned a place, a hairdresser's. The main character got a stationery store nearby. The enemy begins to move away from them, and confidently says that they will still see who will win here. The rest of the audience watches from afar as the guy communicates with the management of the hairdressing salon. Ian tells the hero that the hairdresser opened recently, but the store has been around for a long time. The main character tells him not to worry. The protagonist's rival returns and says with satisfaction that he has collected 200 sponsorship fees and a coupon for 300 yuan. The main character is not impressed. He throws down his cigarette, moves away from his opponent and walks towards the crowd of students. A girl approaches him and offers her help. She says that she will start for him, since he is only a freshman. She enters the store, greets its owner and apologizes for disturbing him. The owner tells her to come through. She begins to explain to him that their club collects sponsors for the faculty. With a sharp and quick movement, the seller hits the table with a book. A loud sound is heard. He tells the student that he already has a lot of debt, and therefore he cannot sponsor anything. The girl says that he takes out this book every time he is asked about sponsorship. The main character thinks that it is difficult for people to earn money. The seller shows the book and says that if the students help him deal with his debts, he can sponsor them. The girl is upset. She is sure that they will no longer be able to get anything from this man. The hero's rivals and club members look at him smugly, confident that he will lose the competition. Suddenly the main character turns to the store owner and says that he can help him deal with his debts. The seller is surprised by what he heard. He did not expect such an offer from the students. The store owner agrees to such conditions. The hero says that he will figure everything out before the second half of the day. The seller gives him instructions. He needs to go to the store on the other side of the street. There he will come out to another store owner. There stands a frightening-looking middle-aged man with a large knife in one hand and a watermelon in the other. The girls are frightened by his appearance. They don't want to go to that shop and mistake the man for a butcher, not a fruit seller. The rivals are pleased with this reaction of the girls. They think that they will be afraid to go there, and thus will lose the competition. But the main character confidently approaches the store owner with a confident expression on his face and a slight grin. He smiles at the seller and says in a confident tone that he needs an IOU to that effect. The action takes place near a fruit shop in the market. The heroes stand in front of the shop of a threatening fruit seller. The seller raises his huge cleaver over the fruit cutting board. It looks threatening. With one strong blow, he cut the watermelon into 2 equal parts with a loud sound. The main character's friends don't like that they have to go to this person, but the main character doesn't react at all. Friends begin to convince him that the debt is not so important. They believe that this seller is not very inclined to communicate. The protagonist tells them that if they are afraid, he can go alone. They are surprised by this statement. The protagonist's rival asks the vice chairman if he should win. He doesn't answer him. The main character approaches the store owner. He looks at him, wiping his knife with a rag. He asks the main character and the 2 friends who stand behind him what they need from him. The hero smiles politely and tells the owner that he does not need the fruit and that he needs money. Hearing this from the main character, the seller looks at him with a frown from under his eyebrows. Then he makes another strong blow and cuts the watermelon into quarters. A loud thud is heard as the knife hits the wood. The owner looks at them and asks again what kind of money we are talking about. The watermelon juice on his knife looks like blood, which makes him look even more menacing. The protagonist's friends are even more frightened of this man. Despite this, the main character himself remains calm. He takes a small piece of watermelon from the seller's kitchen board into his hands and begins to eat it. He calmly and confidently tells the man that he came from the office supply store on the other side of the street. He says that he owes the store owner 3,500 yuan and has not yet paid it back. The store owner is surprised by the courage and impudence of the protagonist. He finds it strange that he is not afraid of him at all. He asks when the store owner hired the main character. He replies that this should not worry him, and again asks about money. The seller says that he does not owe 3,500 yuan. The hero says that he does as he was told. Then the seller turns his attention to the protagonist's friends and asks him what kind of people they are. The main character smiles and says that these are his classmates, and that if he does not repay the debt, then they will have to take the required amount of fruit from him. The owner gets angry when he hears such a threat and shouts at the main character, asking how he dares to do this. He goes into the back room. He complains that he only owes 2,500, and that the owner of the stationery store sent students to him. The protagonist's friends hope that the seller will not get into a fight. We hear the noise of him looking for something among his things. Finally he returns, shows the promissory note, and shouts that he only owes 2,500 yuan. The main character agrees with the named amount. The seller told him to return his receipt to him. The hero says that, apparently, he heard incorrectly, and that the seller only owes 2,500 yuan. The main character says that now he has material evidence of the debt and asks the store owner to repay him. He yells at him. The rest of the students support the main character and tell the store owners to return the debt. He starts yelling at them and asks what will happen if he doesn't pay back his debt. Seeing a crowd gathered around the store, a policeman approaches them. He is trying to understand why so many people have gathered here. He turns to the store owner and says that he needs not to interfere with the rest of the trade and disperse the crowd of people. The seller says that everything will be sold out soon. He gets even angrier at the main character, but he just stands there and smiles politely. The main character and his friends come to a stationery store and hand over the required amount to the store owner. He says that he never thought that the money would come back to him and thanks the character and his friends. He stretches out his hands to take a wad of money, but the main character stops him. The owner asks what it is. The main character replies that according to the contract, this money belongs to him, since he recaptured it from the debtor. The owner complains that your amount is too much and offers him 500 yuan, but no more. The students say that they agreed differently, and the owner has to reluctantly agree with them. The main character received money for sponsorship. He looks contentedly towards his rivals in the competition. He hands the girl the money and says that he received 501 yuan from the owner. She is surprised by this. The protagonist's rivals stand behind them and look at what is happening with dissatisfied faces. The main character confidently looks in their direction. Then I ask the girl what it is. The girl looks at him with displeasure, and for a couple of seconds does not say anything and does not take the money from his hand. Why does she reluctantly, with a sharp movement, snatch the bills from the main character and agree with his victory? Voices are heard everywhere congratulating the character on his victory. The club members begin to leave, clearly upset by what just happened. The students shout after them that according to the agreement they must vacate the chairman's seat. The main character believes that they will not do this. The hero tells his friends that he will treat them to drinks. They are happy about it. The rivals leave the building. The students are outraged that the club members ignored their promise. They believe that they will not quit until they are forced to. One of the protagonist's friends looks after the departing chairman of the club and thinks about the reason for his action. He thinks that the chairman cannot afford to lose authority in the eyes of other students. It was already night outside. The main character is in the building with the rest of the students. They play cards. One of them shouts that he has gathered 4 kings, and that victory is his. His opponent loses. Ian slaps the main character. He complains that Ian again beat him in a game of cards. Then another student runs into the dorm room. He shouts the news. Zhu Qingluan and Zhou Xiao fought with each other. Ian and the main character are surprised. Yang says that Zhou is not that kind of person at all. The main character asks where these two are. Two people who fought are in the dormitory. A dense crowd stands near them and discusses what is happening. They think the two guys had been drinking beforehand. Ian and the main question approach the crowd. The hero does not like what is happening and the fact that the problems do not end. Then the students hear a voice next to them. One of the teachers wants to go through the crowd. One of the guys who fought was covered in scratches and bruises. He looks at the teacher in front of him. Zhou Xiao looks at the wall with displeasure and does not pay attention to the other students in the room. The main character enters the room. He turns to teacher Go, who says that he was just about to find him. The teacher looks sternly at the students and asks the main character if he knows what happened here. The main character looks at the guys who fought and begins to think about the reasons for the fight. He decided that Zhou Xiao had slandered him, which led to a fight between two club members. He thinks that if he acquits himself, then everyone will decide that Qingluan is to blame. This could lead to his expulsion. The hero is not sure what to do. He believes that the current situation could greatly harm his reputation. He thinks that this fight and its solution is a complex task, and it is difficult to resolve it without casualties. The teacher tells the main character to stop being silent and tell him what he knows about what happened. Qingluan hesitantly begins to address the teacher, but his sentence is interrupted mid-sentence, not allowing him to finish. The main character states that he knows what happened here. Although this is not true, Qingluan is very surprised by this. The teacher says that the headman should not participate in such fights and tells him to write an explanatory note. He promises to do this in the evening of the same day. The teacher says that after the explanation, he needs to talk to Zhou Xiao, after which he will be punished for what happened. The hero apologizes to Zhou Xiao. He frowns and looks at the guy with hostility. The hero continues to apologize. At the same time, the doctor offers to examine the injured students. He approaches Zhou Xiao and starts checking him, touching his wounds and asking where it hurts. The teachers look at each other. The doctor states that everything is fine and that there is no need to prescribe medications or treatment. They begin to disperse the gathered curious students and tell them that it is time for them to go to their rooms to sleep. The hero tells Qingluan to leave the scene of the fight and go back to his room. He has an upset face. He agrees, turns around and starts to leave. Only two people remain in the room, the main character and Zhou Xiao. They sit opposite each other and are silent. There is tension in the room. Zhou Xiao starts the conversation first. He tells the main character to stop pretending to be a kind person. The main character does not immediately respond to this, calmly removing the scattered things. Then he turns to the interlocutor and says that he only did this because he is a university student, otherwise, he wouldn't help even if Zhou Xiao was dying. Zhou Xiao is surprised by what he heard. The main character says that he hopes that someone else will use it. He then turns around and begins to walk out of the room with his hands in his pockets. The students in the hallway look at him curiously. Qingluan, seeing him, begins to apologize. He says that he didn't want things to turn out like this between them. Instead of answering the guy, the main character hits him with a strong blow to the leg. Qingluan falls to the ground with a loud sound. The student asks if Qingluan is okay. He says he deserved the hit and isn't complaining. The students hesitantly reassure the guy and say that the headman will forgive him, since he took such a step for his sake. In response to this, Qingluan simply sits silently and looks at the floor. He was clearly very upset about what happened. At this time, teachers communicate with each other on the street. One says he didn't expect this, the other agrees with him. One of them says that the headman is very helpful, another talks about the student union. He thinks that the head of his class is too wild. The teacher says that Zhou Xiao is smart and decided to take a risk this time to show that no one else deserves his position. The second teacher smokes a cigarette on the street and agrees with the words of the first. Next, he wonders what will happen to his student. The other one answers him that he doesn't want to upset the director, so he won't tell him anything. Next, the action moves to the 602nd room of the university. Students gathered there to discuss today's incident. The main character is sitting on a chair. He turned his back to the others and didn't say anything to them, just listened. Qingluan apologizes to him. He says he lost his temper because of the drinking. Other students support him and say that he has already admitted his guilt. Another student notices that the hero is eerily silent. The main character hands Qingluan a cigarette. Seeing it, Qingluan rejoices and takes it from the hands of the protagonist. He starts to tell him, but is interrupted. The main character says that the incident was not useless. The students are surprised by this. The hero smokes and tells the others that after today, Zhong Xiao is very limited in his actions. The action takes place in a university. Club members gathered in the office and invited the main character. They ask if he is ready to take the place of the club's vice chairman for public relations. The main character answers positively. He says that he will not let them down and will live up to their expectations. They say that after Zhou Xiao recently resigned, a position became available after him. The decision to accept the main character was unanimous. They say that he will take office after the end of the holiday. The hero thanks them. Zhou Xiao is unhappy with what is happening. He says nothing and begins to leave the office. He then turns to the rest of the club members. He says that the main character is not as simple as it seems at first glance. He then adds that they will regret their decision to accept the main character for the vacancy. The hero wonders if the guy wants to say anything else about him. He says no, he doesn't want to say anything more. He says that in this case they will meet again, and begins to leave the club office. The others are awkwardly silent. The guy from the club thinks it's a form of gratitude. The girl says that she was asked to support the candidacy of the main character, and that she cannot let him down. Further events unfold on the 1st of October. During a national holiday, there is a crowd of students on the street. The main character says that the girl's father shouldn't have met him. She replies that in that case she would have to take the bus. They hear the driver say it's time for them to hit the road. The car has 7 seats and belongs to Uncle Xiao. The student says that the henchmen need to act maturely considering their age. Chen is tired of this. The driver tells the characters to get into the car and move their luggage and belongings to the back. A girl sits in the passenger seat. There is only one empty seat next to her. The student is happy that he can sit next to her. He opens the door and prepares to enter the car. The main character tells him to let him go ahead because he wants to sit in the back seat of the car. He lets him through. He thinks that everything is going well and that he can get hooked on the girl. Then he looks at the hero and sees that he did not sit in the back seat, but next to the girl, and now it is occupied. He asks if he wanted to sit back, but he replies that he managed to change his mind. The student is ushered in and told to get into the car. He is angry at the protagonist's deception, but finally sits inside. The car is getting ready to hit the road. The student complains about the behavior of the main character and says that he will never take his word for it after this. The driver tells the students to fasten their seat belts. They gradually begin to move. The student in the back seat is trying to start a conversation with the girl. He asks what club she joined. She says that she is not yet sure where to go, as there are too many options before her. He starts bragging and says that he joined the advertising club and now he doesn't have to worry about anything. Another passenger says he wanted to join the organization's club but was not accepted. The girl replies that she would like to join the student union. They then ask the hero, to which he replies that he is the vice chairman for public relations at the student union. They answer him that he is already the head of his group at the university, and where else can he strive? He doesn't believe that the main character became the vice chairman of public relations in the students' union. The driver listens to the conversation and thinks that he is sure that the main character really took the post, judging by his experience with him. The student begins to say that a freshman would not be allowed into such a position. For this he would have to be too outstanding. He asks the hero's opinion, but he brushes off the answer and says that he doesn't want to talk about various nonsense. After some time, the car stops on the street. The sound of the brake is heard. Students get out of the car. The driver says that this is where they say goodbye, since he still has business to resolve. The car then takes off and drives away from them. The students look after her. The girl says that she has a lot of things, and they offer her help in carrying them. She notices that something is wrong with the main character and asks him about it. She looks worried. She says that she wants her things to go to Chen Han's hen. He looks at her without any visible reaction. Hearing this, the student says that he himself can help the girl carry the bags. He is taken away, but he is unhappy that he could not stay with the girl and help her, and that this chance went to the main character. The hero thinks that he could have arrived earlier and not carry other people's things, but he helped a person save on train travel. He tells the girl to be careful, but she has already managed to run ahead and began to eat the sweet on a stick. She invites him to eat the same, but he confidently refuses the offer. Hearing a negative answer, she frowns and looks at the main character with displeasure. The guy gives up and with a deep sigh agrees to eat the same sweetness. She suddenly approaches the guy and hands a stick with a sweet treat directly into his mouth. This takes him by surprise, but he begins to eat. For a while they are silent and say nothing. She begins to tell him something about what recently happened, but is interrupted. The main character looks deep into the crowd and sees someone. The main character's father is standing there, looking in bewilderment at the awkward scene between the guy and the girl. The girl hadn't noticed him yet. The main character begins to think how to get out of this situation. Further events unfold in the evening. The heroes came to the billiards club to spend time there and relax. The main character stands near the billiard table with a cue in his hands. His friend says he didn't expect them to find such nice places in the city. He then notices two attractive girls walking up the stairs next to them. They have how yesterday the main character saw his father while walking. He says his father remained silent. He also says that his father knows Xiao. They continue playing billiards, and the main character pockets the ball. After the blow, he hands the cue to his friend and says that it is his turn to hit. He notices that the girls nearby are dressed very lightly, and asks the main character if they are freezing in this temperature. The hero assumes that they are already used to it. While the student is playing billiards, the main character sits down on a chair nearby and takes out a cigarette. He sets it on fire and begins to smoke, each time releasing clouds of tobacco smoke from his mouth. While he is smoking, one of the girls comes up to him and talks to him. She invites him to have a drink with her. He points to his friend and says that she better seduce him since he is still innocent. Having listened to his advice, she approaches the guy and says that she was told that he has not yet tasted the fruit of love. He blushes and begins to mutter something uncertainly in response to her, unable to formulate a coherent sentence. While they are having fun in the establishment, night falls on the street and the moon is visible in the sky. They leave the nightclub. The hero's friend begins to complain that they only left at 10 o'clock in the evening. The main character advises him to hold out until the new year. He starts saying that he doesn't need a random girl he met in a nightclub. The hero takes out a cigarette, lights it and starts smoking. He starts to talk about what he did on campus, but stops mid-sentence. A friend begins to ask him what he was doing on campus, but the main character does not answer him. They both notice someone next to him and look in their direction. They are silent together. There are two girls standing there who look at them in surprise and offense. A friend invites the main character to run away from here, but he replies that it's too late to run away, since they were seen. The main character thinks that since he and Junyi are not in a relationship, there is nothing wrong with him going to the bar. He smiles and tells her that the party is over and says her house is in the other direction. She gets angry and says that he told her that he was going to his grandmother. Hearing this, he doesn't know how to respond. He just looks at Junai. Another girl says that when they were talking, Junai mentioned that she might date the main character, but Junai interrupts her. Instead of answering, Junyi bends down and puts down the drink she was holding. She tells her friend to get out of here and they silently begin to walk away from the guys. The girl begins to say that recently a new drink appeared in the store, which Junyi bought for the main character, and blames him for the places he visits. She yells at him and calls him a scumbag. The main character doesn't understand what's wrong with this and thinks that he didn't do anything wrong. The protagonist's friend invites him to catch up with the girl. The main character feels bad about what happened. A friend tells him that he could lose his girlfriend this way. The fruit drink that Junyi left spilled on the ground. A little later, the main character decides to call Junyi's father. He goes to the payphone and dials its number. He picks up the phone, and the main character says that he would like the phone to be passed to Junai. The heroine's father looks at the door of the girl's room, and she does not answer anything, and does not react in any way to the call. He tells the hero that Junai is already resting, so he will have to talk the next day. Having heard the answer, the hero silently puts the receiver back on the payphone, then he returns to his place. The next day in the morning, he again starts calling Junyi's house, and the heroine's father picks up the phone again. He asks him to give the phone to the girl, but her father says she left the house, so she can't talk right now. A short time later he calls the same place again. The heroine's father picks up the phone again. He asks who is calling. Junyi herself is sitting next to him on the sofa, but she does not answer the phone from her father. The main character says that he wants to talk to the girl, but he is told that she has not returned home yet, although this is not true. Hearing the answer, the guy tells the heroine's father to tell her that Chen is returning that same day. The father whispers to the girl that the main character is returning today. She doesn't react to this at all. She continues to sit sullenly on the couch and ignore all the guy's attempts to establish contact. Her father is upset about this. He looks at her, not sure what to say to her in this situation. He asks the girl what was the reason for the quarrel between them, and what happened the day before. She doesn't answer and continues to silently look at the floor. It is clear from her that she is upset by what is happening. The hero, hanging up the payphone, begins to leave there. He doesn't know what to do with the relationship. The main character's father says that her mother will be returning soon. He believes that she will ask questions if she sees her daughter's condition and mood. Instead of answering, the girl gets up from the sofa and says that she will go to the shower. Her father looks after her, upset. He thinks what to say to her about this. Finally he asks her a question and asks her if she and Chen are in love with each other. She responds aggressively and sharply that they are not in love, have never been in love and never will be. At home, the main character is packing his things to go back to university. He stuffs them into his backpack. His mother complains that until recently she was raising her son, but now he is mercilessly leaving. He replies that he cannot do anything about it, since he is the headman. She takes 1,000 yuan, hands it to the main character and tells him to take the money from her. He tells her that he does not need finances. She asks how this can be if school has just begun, and he replies that he recently earned 2,500 yuan. The hero begins to leave the house and tells his parents to take care of their health and not quarrel with each other. The mother looks after him, not knowing what to say. He closes the door behind him. His parents are left alone. She asks her husband if they have become old. He wonders why she decided this. She says that it seems to her that her son now has his own world, where he does not let his parents in, does not take money and does not need it at all. Her father thinks this is good because they will worry less about her, but the mother thinks this is wrong. She asks if his husband's colleagues have daughters of the right age for Chen Hanzhen to marry. The father remembers meeting his son and Junyi together on the street as a couple. He tells his wife that his colleagues probably have daughters of the right age, still remembering the scene between the guy and the girl. There is a heavy downpour outside. The sky is covered with thunderclouds. The main character walks without an umbrella along a flooded street, covering himself from the moisture with his hand. He thinks about how unfortunate it was to rain when he returned from his parents. In the distance he sees a girl which stands in the rain and gets wet. He recognizes her. She catches his eye and also notices the main character. She is surprised to see him here. The main character begins to walk in the direction of the girl. As he walks, he takes out an umbrella from his backpack. The girl thinks what he is doing here. She is embarrassed by him and blushes a little. She remembers their last meeting, which was very strange. Remembering the awkward situation, she blushes even more. She feels very awkward in his presence. He looks at her, making her feel even more uncomfortable. She starts to leave, but he stops her and tells her to wait. He says he won't eat her and there's no reason to run away from him. She just blushes and mumbles. He just looks at her. The relationship between a guy and a girl is very awkward. He says that he doesn't want to leave her to eat alone and offers to stay and not leave. It's raining heavily outside. The main character meets a girl who is hiding from the rain under a canopy. She sadly looks into nowhere, and he says that she can't be afraid of him and stay with him. He says that they should help each other when he's in a bad mood and she asks if he wants to go out to eat. He says there is a new dish in the cafeteria. When asked about the price, he replies that it costs 50 yuan. They decide to walk to the hostel, and the girl starts urging the guy to walk faster. They walk into the rain and she begins to run quickly. The guy remains standing still. She disappears from sight, then returns, but without an umbrella. She tries not to get wet in the downpour. The hero asks where her umbrella is, to which she replies that she gave it to her neighbor so that she wouldn't get wet. He is surprised and asks the girl if she doesn't need him herself so as not to get wet. She tells the main character that everything is fine. The hero thinks that this girl is a very simple person. They start walking together. The hero tells her to stay close to stay under the umbrella and not get wet. Finally, after a few minutes of walking, they arrive at the cafeteria where they were heading. They order shrimp and lamb for 2 people. In total it costs 53 yuan. The girl hands the banknotes to the cashier. They begin to look for a place in the hall to sit. The hero asks the girl if she went to the hostel to get money, and she says yes. He looks at her in bewilderment, but doesn't say anything directly to the girl. They sit down at the table and begin to silently eat their portions with chopsticks. The hero eats his order and looks at the girl. They don't talk. He asks if she is hungry when he sees that she is not eating. She just holds the food on chopsticks and does nothing. Her face darkens and she gets upset hearing his question. She looks sad. He says that this dish costs more than the price for accommodation, and asks if she will eat it. She says that she still has 100 yuan saved up. In addition, she will earn a little money by sorting books in the library. In addition, she can save money and eat in a cafe. He asks if she blames him for spending her money on food. She says no. He looks curiously at the girl's reaction, but does not directly say anything to her. He tells her that in this case she needs to become his girlfriend. This surprises her extremely. Out of surprise at the offer, she drops her plate of rice on the table. He looks at the bowl but doesn't say anything out loud to her. There is an awkward silence between them. He then looks at her, but again says nothing. She also remains silent. She begins to feel embarrassed and blush in front of him. She doesn't know how to respond to such a rare proposal. She says that she only ate a couple of bites of food and asks the main character not to force her to eat. He is surprised by her reaction, but agrees and moves the topic of conversation to something else. She looks at the rice scattered on the table. He says he doesn't like forcing people to do things. She remembers how her friends convinced her that the main character quickly took the post of headman. They advised her to avoid him if she didn't like him. She looks at the main character, but doesn't find anything to say. She is very embarrassed by what is happening in the dining room. He looks at her with an interested gaze. An awkward silence fell between them again. She says it's time for her to go. The main character agrees that he, too, has already eaten. He says that she needs to take an umbrella since the canteen is located near the hostel. In addition, he tells her to take the remaining food from the cafeteria home with her. He turns away from her, opens the curtains and looks out the window. She looks at the main character uncertainly, but doesn't say anything out loud to him. She then looks down and notices something lying on the table next to her. It turns out to be a white envelope that the main character did not take. She says that he did not take the envelope, but the main character had already left the dining room. She takes the envelope in her hands and looks at it, not sure what to do with it now. The main character tells teacher Go that when he was visiting his parents, he took 2 geese with him to cook. The teacher thanks him and says that he wants to treat him. The main character replies that the teacher is too polite. The teacher addresses a little girl who is playing on the floor. He says that Chen Han's hen, her beloved brother, has come. She jumps into his arms and says that he has finally come. He replies that he came here to see her. She takes his hand and says that she recognized teacher Xiaoyu's QQ. Teacher Go doesn't understand what QQ is that she's talking about. The hero thinks that next time he needs to give something to the girl. He says out loud that she should tell everyone what she found out after dinner. A woman's voice is heard from the kitchen, saying that the food is ready and that dinner can begin. The main character turns to teacher Go and says that he will go to the kitchen first. The teacher tells the main character that there is a girl in their group named Shin Yuchu, and asks if the guy knows her. The teacher begins to talk about how she has problems in her family and that she has applied for assistance for the poor, but the application has not yet been verified. He asks the main character if he can deal with this issue. The hero did not answer the teacher, and only made a surprised expression on his face. The teacher asked if the headman had any questions, and the main character replied that he had no questions. Further events unfold on October 8 in the university building. It's day outside. He sits with his friends in classes. Ian complains that it is difficult to return from vacation. The hero says that he is also tired. In the audience, a girl approaches him and tells him to leave the office and talk to her. She takes him away from the rest of the students so that their conversation cannot be heard by anyone. She takes a white envelope out of her pocket and shows it to the main character. She annoyedly asks what this means. The main character looks at the envelope and thinks about how the letter assigned to Shin Yuchu ended up in her possession. He says that such things should not be discussed here, as students may not understand everything well. The girl tells him that he is terrible. She then said that Shin Yuchu asked her to return this letter to the main character. He asks if Shin Yuchu opened the envelope and looked at its contents. The girl says that Shin Yuchu did not open it, but she opened it herself. The hero asks what is needed from him in this case. The girl says that he doesn't need to pursue Shin. She says that there are many other girls, for example, his classmates. Hearing this, the headman asks if he caused any harm to Shin Yuchu. The girl says that he gave her 500 yuan, and it might offend her if she opened the envelope. He replies that it is just his kindness. The hero raises his hand and says that in any case, he does not want to cause her any harm. The girl does not believe his words. She skeptically asks if this is true. She says that since the boys and girls of the group trust him, the guy should behave decently. The main character says that she is too ignorant, lights a cigarette and starts smoking. The girl turns away from the tobacco smoke. The guy tells her that he is not in love with anyone. The hero tells the girl that he could introduce her to his acquaintance. He praises him in every possible way, says that he is kind and polite. She is angry with him and is about to leave, but halfway there she turns around and looks at him. She says girls feel disconnected from boys, they often feel that they need to get closer to guys. The hero thinks that this is a good offer, thus, the team will become more friendly, and he will be able to communicate with Shin-Yuchu more often. He asks what his interlocutor is thinking about. She says that we could meet as a group and eat somewhere. The hero says that this is too old-fashioned, he believes that everyone needs to be united somehow. The girl asks if he came up with something. He replies that he will tell her when he returns to the dorm. She turns around and says she's leaving. He stops her and tells her to wait some more. He puts out his cigarette and says that there is one more issue that he wants to discuss with her. She asks what is this question. He doesn't answer her right away and is silent for a second. He says that she applied for financial support for Shin-Yuchu, but did not say when problems with the approval of the application began. She stammers. He says that they have already agreed that she would contact him when problems arise that she cannot solve. He says she has self-motivation and a sense of dignity, but sometimes they need to be crossed. She says she can sort it out and says she's going to go to the committee again to try to get help. He says he is going to go with her to deal with this situation. She agrees. She remains awkwardly silent, but doesn't say anything else to Chen Hansen. Then she meets with Shin-Yuchu and says that the teacher told everything to the headman, and now he will go to deal with the problem. She feels awkward about this and doesn't know what to say. She then notices a man in the doorway. This turns out to be the main character. He looks straight at her confidently, which makes her even more embarrassed. She puts her head on the desk and hides her face. She blushes deeply in front of Chen Hansen and doesn't want him to see it. The action takes place in the teacher's office at the protagonist's university. He comes there with two girls. One of them greets the teacher. Shin-Yuchu is shy and hides behind his friend. The main character looks at the teacher's face and recognizes him. This is Yu Yueping. The teacher tells the girls that they came in vain, since they still need to wait for the application to be approved. He says the data provided is not enough. The girl asks how long the whole process will take. He replies that he doesn't know and that they will let you know when it's ready. The girl gets angry and says that she sent the documents before the holidays started, and asks why nothing is ready yet. He says that they have certain financial rules and that they should understand such things. All three stand and look at the teacher. He is silent and pointedly does not look at them. The girl thinks that she should not underestimate Chen Hansen, and that he can solve the problem. The girl tells the teacher that he must understand Shin-Yuchu's situation, and that she is constantly saving on food. She says that Shin-Yuchu always works late in the library, and that she is going to get a second job in the cafeteria in order to afford food. She gets angry at him and says that they should consider such things regarding students. The teacher remains silent and does not pay attention to the words of the enraged girl. Seeing that she gets no reaction to her words, she gets even angrier and can barely contain herself. She can't stand it and hits the table with force. She asks what kind of teacher he is. Finally, the teacher opens a shelf in the desk and takes out a small item. He gives them the seal and says that now the students themselves bear all responsibility for this situation. Who grabs it from the table. The main character tries to calm her down, but she tells him not to stop her from helping Shin-Yuchu. The hero tells the teacher that it's time for them all to calm down a little and pull themselves together. They drag the angry girl out of the room, ignoring her protests. They go out onto the street in front of the building. Chen Hansen asks if she has calmed down yet. She complains that although Shin-Yuchu fulfilled all the conditions, she never received help. Shin herself says that they no longer need to go there. She assures her that everything is fine and that she can cope without financial support for students. The main character sits on the steps of a building and sighs loudly. He addresses the girls. He asks them to give him the documents Shin-Yuchu needs. They ask if he can get help for her. He doesn't know whether the idea will be successful, but he thinks it's worth at least trying. The girl believes that nothing will come of this, since the teacher does not even want to try to understand the student's situation. The hero thinks that the problem is different, that who doesn't know how to behave, but he doesn't say this out loud. He gets up from the steps and walks back into the building, to the teacher's office. He says his name and apologizes for the girl's behavior and says that she did not understand the situation. Secretary Yu agrees with him, but other than that he doesn't say anything. The hero notices something nearby in the office and draws attention to it. He goes to the secretary's closet and begins to clean it and put things in order. The secretary watches this, but says nothing. The hero puts the books in their place and neatly displays them on the shelf. He then takes a broom and begins to sweep away the dust and debris on the office floor. The secretary wants to stop him, but Chen Hansen only smiles politely at him. He then takes a mop and begins to wipe the floor. The secretary works silently all this time. He then makes hot coffee for the secretary while he fills out paperwork on his desk. During the time the hero is doing this, the whole morning passes and noon comes. The secretary rises from the table and says that he is going to go eat during the break. The main character agrees and together with him leaves the office into the corridor. After a short amount of time, the hero returns to the secretary's office. He greets him. The secretary asks if he should have couples at the university now. He says they don't have any dates now. The secretary says that he cleaned up well and can now return to the hostel. The hero replies that he only washed the floor and did not have time to clean the secretary's closet. The secretary thinks that everything depends on how long the hero spends in his attempts to get help for Shin-Yuchu. Evening is coming, it's 5:30. The main character and the secretary are still in the office. The secretary tells the character that he has already cleaned the floor and closet, and now there is no need to come the next day. The main character says that he is not done yet, and that he has only removed the outside of the closet, but has not yet cleaned the inside. The next morning, the main character continues to clean the secretary's office. They don't communicate. On the third day the situation repeats itself. They again do not speak to each other. On the fourth day, the guy still continues cleaning. Finally, the secretary turns to him. He approaches the guy and asks what his name is. The hero himself is wiping the closet at this time. He introduces himself and says that he is the leader of his group. The secretary invites him to smoke, and he agrees. The guy lights the secretary's cigarette. They start smoking together. They are silent, stand next to each other and only release clouds of tobacco smoke. The secretary asks if things are really that bad for Shin-Yuchu financially. The hero replies that her parents died early and that she lived with her grandmother, who was no longer able to earn money. He says that Shin-Yuchu saves as much as possible on food, and that she only spends 50 yuan during the month. The secretary listens to the guy and puts out his cigarette in the ashtray. He says that he now understands the girl's situation. The main character is still smoking and doesn't answer anything. Further events unfold in Secretary Yu's office. The main character brings him breakfast, and the secretary says that he shouldn't have. The guy tells the secretary that he sees documents here that could encourage students to start their own business. The secretary replies that the university actually has very few resources for this, and all they can do for the students is to vacate the classrooms. The secretary says that now people open their own businesses in order to gain publicity. Then the secretary remembers something and starts looking in his desk shelf for something for the main character. He takes out the documents and says that the main character does not need to come tomorrow, and tells the girl to fill out the documents. The guy takes documents for Shin-Yuchu from the hands of the secretary and is surprised at the service provided. The secretary says that he talked to the teacher and he confirmed the girl's financial situation. He says the documents need to be submitted next week. The hero asks if documents from the city of Shin-Yuchu are needed. The secretary replies that it is not too important. The guy begins to read the documents contentedly. This is an application to register for financial aid for low-income students. The main character is pleased that he was right and was able to help the girl. Further events unfold in the office where students and friends of the protagonist have gathered. They brag about which of them helped him this week. All three had helped him recently. The main character agrees that their help is extremely important to him. The students support him. He then says that they need to organize events for the guys and girls of the group. The students love the idea and are excited about the opportunity to work on this project. The hero says that who advised them to go somewhere to eat and sing. The students think this is a good idea. The main character says that he did not approve of this option, and the students, in bewilderment, ask him why. He argues that they are still too young for such events and entertainment. Hearing this, the guys ask if the main character has a better idea. He suggests going to the student activity center and purchasing 54 movie tickets. One of his students dreams of being seated next to Sean Ian, another student, at the cinema. He complains that he has run out of cigarettes and that without them he will not be able to think normally. One of his friends offers to buy them for him. He starts to leave, but the main character stops him and says that he will buy 2 light cigarettes. He tells Chen Han's hen not to worry and that he will buy suitable ones for him. The main character then approaches Shin Yuchu, who is sitting at the table reading something in a book. She notices him, but is too shy of him to say anything or say hello to him. He asks if she missed her while he was away the previous few days. She doesn't answer this. He says he needs help catching up on his studies because he's been away for a couple of days. He asks if she heard him. She timidly and hesitantly tells him that yes. Then a girl enters the office, starts screaming at the main character and tells him not to pester Shin Yuchu. He says she came just on time. He has a form to help low-income students and needs help filling it out. The girl is happy when she sees the document. She is surprised that the secretary still helped the main character get approval for his application. Shin Yuchu hesitantly thanks the main character for the service rendered. He says that when they have time they will need to sleep together. She gets angry and embarrassed in return. When the girl filled out the application, she asked the main character when the finances would arrive. He says there is no way to know yet. The hero says that in order to unite the team, it is necessary to organize a joint viewing of films. He says he plans to buy 54 tickets at a youth activity center. He also mentions that girls and boys will draw lots to determine who sits with whom. He says this method could break people into small groups and bring them together. In addition, he suggests that this may lead to the development of a romantic relationship. He says that if the others don't have any objections to the plan, then that's what he'll do. He starts to leave, and the girl looks after him in bewilderment. She says nothing in response to the proposal. He then turns around and says that since this is a group event, no one should miss it. Shin Yuchu is worried, but her friend says that she should go because he helped her with financial assistance. She advises her to scream if the guy starts to pester her or behave inappropriately. In front of the group, the main character announces that in order to unite the team, it is necessary to organize a joint viewing of films, and schedules it for the evening of the same day. He points to the box with lots. He says that all places will be drawn randomly between guys and girls. The girls like the idea. They say that they haven't done this for a long time, and the event will certainly be interesting. Students line up in front of the draw. They begin to take one out of the box one by one. Some loudly announce their results. While other students are making noise and discussing the missing places, Shin Yuchu looks at his piece of paper. There she sees number 707. She remembers what the main character did not warn about. He said that he would have number 706, and that they would sit together, so there was no need to draw lots. One of the teachers looks out the window and sees guys approaching girls and starting to talk to them. One of the students approaches the headman. She asks him a question and asks what place he got. He replies that it will be much more interesting if they find out about it after they are in the cinema. She doesn't like this answer. She reaches out to the main character's piece of paper and tells her to let her look at the serial number. She sees that the number 707 is written on the main character's paper. She looks at the paper for a second. She gets upset seeing his number. She tells him to forget and go to the cinema. The hero doesn't answer her. He looks after her and holds his piece of paper in his hands, unsure of what to do in this situation. Guys come to the event dressed up, with various accessories and decorations. One of them pours out several bracelets and the other chooses a chain for his neck. One of them asks if the main character likes his hairstyle. He thinks that my student lacks a suit to look like an adult. The main character asks the assembled students if they are ready. They answer positively in unison. After this, they all gather and begin to leave the university building together. The doors of the building open, and students from the protagonist's group begin to come out. First, the girls who dressed up in dresses for this event come out. The main character notices that guys do not communicate with girls, but believes that after watching the movie several couples may appear. He looks at the door. He wonders why Shin Yuchu hasn't come yet. Finally she comes. She approaches the hero and asks for forgiveness for keeping him waiting. She makes excuses and, stuttering a little, says that she spent a long time studying. She was out of breath and tired. He turns around and starts walking. She apologizes to him again and starts to follow him. He asks if she wants to eat or drink. She answers both questions in the negative. The hero says that the film is long and she might get hungry. She hesitantly answers that she doesn't know if she wants something. He tells her to go ahead, and he will catch up with her a little later. She stands alone at the entrance to the cinema and waits for the main character to finally arrive. She wonders if he is angry with her. She is lonely and sadness is visible on her face. The main character comes up from behind with a bag of popcorn. He tells her to move forward and not stand still. Suddenly she stumbles awkwardly over something and begins to fall to the ground. She gets scared and screams, but in flight, the main character catches her and holds her in his hands from falling. She looks at him and blushes deeply from the awkward situation. He holds it in one hand and a pack of popcorn in the other. He tells her in her ear to walk more carefully and she continues to feel shy and blush at his words. Finally he takes her hand and leads her along. He tells her to follow him. Several dozen students are sitting in the cinema hall and watching a movie on the big screen. The main character thinks that he already knows the plot of this movie, but wants to pretend that he doesn't know it. The guy is watching Shin-Yuchu. She looks fascinated at the cinema screen, not paying attention to the behavior of the main character. He notes that she has a very thin wrist and that she doesn't eat meat at all. He thinks that financial assistance will be very useful for her. She notices his gaze on her and looks in his direction. She again feels shy and blushes at every contact with the guy. Chen Han's hand reaches into the bag of popcorn, but takes out not the food, but the girl's hand. She begins to blush even more from the awkward situation. The main character pretends as if he doesn't care. He asks her to be quiet as the most interesting part of the film is about to begin. She looks at him and is not sure what to do in such a situation. In the end, she doesn't say anything and continues to hold his hand in hers, still embarrassed. When the film ended, it was already night outside. The hero asks if the girl liked today's film. She says she liked it, but that it was too long. The main character says that it didn't seem that long to him. He invites her to go to the cinema again a little later. She is embarrassed and does not find how to respond to this proposal. He asks if her silence can be regarded as consent. The girl gets nervous and says that's not what she meant. He doesn't say anything and looks carefully straight into the heroine's eyes. Shin-Yuchu also looks at the hero, not knowing what to say to her. Tension grows between them. Chen Han's hand opens his mouth and is about to say something to the girl, but he is suddenly interrupted. An athlete running past slightly touches the main character in the back with his elbow. From this point he flies straight towards Shin-Yuchu. She gets scared when he gets very close and opens her eyes wide in surprise. Because of the push, he touches Shin-Yuchu's face with his lips, which leads to an awkward situation that is similar to a kiss. The athlete runs further and apologizes for pushing the main character, while the guy and girl stand in a stupor. The guy begins to apologize to Shin-Yuchu, but she is unable to listen to him and begins to panic. She is very frightened by what is happening, and without thinking, she pushes the main character. From the push, he begins to fly straight into a pond in the park. She screams at him. The athlete looks at the situation with surprise. The hero does not maintain his balance and with a loud splash, Chen Han's hand falls into the water. Then he emerges from the water and says that she almost killed him. The athlete approaches them and asks if everything is okay, and thinks that the guy and the girl are arguing with each other. The hero says that the girl has an excellent reaction and extends his hand to her so that she can help him get out of the water. She agrees and pulls the soaked guy out of the pond. She begins to awkwardly apologize. He tells her to go without him because he needs to go back to the dorm and change his clothes to dry ones. The hero complains that although the plan with the film was a success, such carelessness led to an awkward situation. He leaves the girl and on the way sneezes from the cold and moisture. She looks into the distance. When the headman disappears from sight, the girl is left alone with her thoughts. She finds the situation funny and laughs a little at the embarrassment that happened between them. The hero returns to the team in the dorm. In the dormitory, one of the students approaches the main character. He starts complaining about how miserable his life is. The headman asks if his life is really even more miserable than the life of the main character. He then notices that the main character is wet and asks what happened. He says that he accidentally fell into the lake and that there is nothing special about it. A student talks about how the girl he was supposed to sit with changed her ticket. Because of this, he had to sit with his aunt. The rest of the students find it funny, but the guy nevertheless cries because of what happened. The main character calms him down slightly. The student continues to be sad because his girlfriend rejected him. He says it would be better if she just ignored him and didn't give him false hope. He cries and sings sad songs about love in the room in front of the other students. Why would someone throw a pillow at him? students complain that he doesn't let anyone sleep with his singing. The main character accuses the student of giving up and says that he wanted to invite him to play a shooter, but now he won't. Another student sides with the guy and says he needs to be given a chance to talk. He remembers a girl who recently had trouble coping with unhappy love. This girl was from a nearby university and lived on the 3rd floor. The hero asks for the address again. They tell him that such a girl received only a few minor injuries. He remembers his quarrel with his girlfriend a few days before. He thinks it could be the same girl and is going to visit her. He begins to pack up and leave the room. The neighbors tell him that it is too late to go anywhere. He runs barefoot out of the dorm room. They shout after him that he forgot to put on his socks. He comes to the right building and says that he is looking for Junyi from group 303. The watchwoman asks what his name is. It is named after the girl's father. The watchwoman calls Junai and says that her father wants to meet with her and that he has come to see her. She comes downstairs from my room and goes out to the main character on the street in home clothes. She thinks about why her father needed to look for her at such a time of day. She then hears a voice and turns around and notices the main character. He tells her not to look around. He says that he only gave his name to her father so that she would come down to talk to him. She calls him a scoundrel, turns around and is about to go back. He tries to reason with her and tells her to calmly discuss everything. She replies that he should discuss everything with the girls from the bar. He says that she can leave, but then tomorrow he will come with a large poster and put it up at the bottom of her dorm. He says he will pretend to be the father of her children and say that he can take care of the children. The heroine blushes and is angry with him for such a proposal. She sighs and reluctantly agrees to talk to him and remains standing on the street. He says that he called her many times, but she did not answer the phone and because of this he could not explain to her what happened the night of their quarrel. He says that Zibo had a fight with his mother that day and asked him to go out with him. She asks if Zibo invited him to that bar. She has a hard time believing and is skeptical. The main character says that it was a mistake to agree to this offer, and that now he understands that he should have refused him. She asks what he was doing at the nightclub. He says that he was just playing billiards with Zibo together. He says that if she doesn't believe, she can call Zibo and ask him herself. Hearing this explanation, she silently looks at Chen Hanzhen for a while. Then she turns away from him but remains standing in place. The hero does not understand what kind of reaction this is. She stands there for a few seconds. Both the guy and the girl are silent. An awkward silence fell between them. She tells him to go with her to the library at 7:30 tomorrow morning without delay. Without giving him any time to respond, she turns around and runs back to her student dorm. The main character looks after her in bewilderment, not understanding what just happened. Further events unfold in the library the next day at 7:30 in the morning, where the main character came. He stands at the entrance and thinks why he made an appointment for such an early morning time. Nearby he sees guys holding packages of food in their hands. He reflects on the fact that they came to give breakfast to their girls. The doors open and 3 girls come out of the library. One of them is Junai, 2 more are unknown to the hero. The girl looks at the main character. He thinks that he now looks like those guys who brought their girlfriends food. Then the guys who were waiting nearby with food all run up to Junai. They start handing her packs of food. One of them bought an egg, another bought buns, and the third bought a full breakfast. Junyi thanks him, but politely refuses the offered food. One of the guys leaves a pack of food nearby. He is upset by Junyi's refusal. He says that even though she rejects him, something might work out between them one day, but he is cut off mid-sentence. The main character takes the food left by the guy and begins to eat. He yells at him. The guy doesn't understand if this is possible. The main character still continues to eat, not paying attention to the protests. Then he asks if the guy would like to treat him to a drink with his meal as well. Junai starts to pull him away from the poor guy. He protests and wants to eat some more. Junyi's 3 fans stare after her, upset after seeing her boyfriend. After a short time, Junai and the main character come together to the entrance to the library. She asks the headman if he is interested in who these guys were before the entrance. He asks who they were. The girl believes that the question was asked insincerely and does not want to answer it. She gives him the bag and says that she will look for the book, and let him find a place for now. He sits down at a free table in the library and begins to wait for the girl. He is bored while he sits by himself. She returns with books and says that she took books for him on his specialty. He replies that he is more interested in books on law. She asks why he needs such books if he does not study this discipline. he replies that students often start their own businesses, and knowledge of the laws can greatly help with this. Then he says that he doesn't really want to read it, and would rather ask a pretty girl from the relevant faculty to read these books to him. The girl snorts. They then sit silently for a while she studies literature. He notices a guy in the distance watching them from the other side of the room. He asks if she reads books on her specialty. She replies that she reads books on his specialty. He notes that they often turn to her for help and she agrees with this. He switches the topic and starts talking about how she covered for him this morning. She says yes, that's what she did. She put the book down and looks at the main character. He looks back at her, but doesn't say anything. He begins to rise from the table. He says he wants to make sure no one bothers her again. She doesn't understand what we're talking about. He puts his hand on the table and approaches the girl, who does not know how to react to this. He leans down and kisses her on the lips. She is shocked by this and does nothing in response. She blushes very red from shame and embarrassment, but does not break away from the kiss. The action takes place later, in the main character's room. He spits blood into the sink. He looks at himself in the mirror and notices that the girl almost bit off his lip. He remembers the kiss and thinks that for the girl it was her first kiss and that's why she got angry. A neighbor asks him if he has a broken lip. He replies that he just bit her and that there is nothing to worry about. The neighbor tells him to be careful. He also adds that soon there will be a check with Teacher Tao so that the main character does not forget. The main character hears the bell and leaves the balcony, saying that a girl is probably looking for him now. He enters the room and takes the phone. He greets Junyi after hearing that it was her calling. She asks him about the condition of his mouth. She worries about whether she bit his lip. The main character draws attention to the fact that his neighbor, who is sitting next to him, overhears his dialogue with the girl. He listens as they discuss going to the doctor together. The hero says that he doesn't have much time. The neighbor is jealous of their relationship and wonders whether the headman has a beautiful girl. Next, the action takes place in the university auditorium. Someone is calling Shin-Yuchu. The joyful girl looks at her and says that her application for financial aid for low-income students was approved. Shin-Yuchu thanks her and rejoices at the news he received. She feels much more comfortable with her friend than with guys. The girl says that Chen Han's hen can be relied upon, and the girl Shin-Yuchu agrees with this. Guys enter the room, including the main character. The girls notice them. He enters and also pays attention to Shin-Yuchu and her friend. She remembers the previous situation, gets embarrassed and starts to blush, looking away from the headman. She recalls an awkward situation when they touched each other near the lake in the park. The main character asks if her application for financial assistance for low-income students has been approved. He then walks over and puts his elbow on her shoulder. A friend asks why he does this. The main character replies that he just says hello. The hero says that it was his merit that the application was approved, but who also tried, who snorts hearing this. He says that even though they have already solved this problem, they still need to thank Secretary Yu. He leans toward Shin-Yuchu, but his girlfriend pushes him aside. She asks how he wants to thank the secretary. He suggests giving essential gifts, like folders. He says the girl should also contribute the gift. She asks what needs to be bought. He offers to bring dishes from his native region instead of buying. A friend says that Shin-Yuchu constantly eats dried peppers and offers to give the secretary some chili peppers. The girl says that Shin-Yuchu found wild vegetables near the dormitory and waters them daily. Shin-Yuchu blushes even more and feels embarrassed after hearing this. An awkward silence hangs. The guy asks why he had to say this. The friend says that she decided that it was on topic to say this. The guy advises to peel the vegetables and peppers and give them to the secretary as a small gesture of gratitude. He says he doesn't know what chili peppers taste like, but half the group has never eaten it either. Shin-Yuchu is surprised and asks if most people have never tried chili pepper. 2 days later, the main character and his friends are walking down the street and talking. One of the students complains that his game was not saved. A girl comes, she is upset and starts complaining to the main character. He thinks that she is waiting for someone here, but she says that Shin-Yuchu is crying for some reason. He is surprised and asks the girl the reason for Shin-Yuchu's behavior. She starts telling a story. When the main character suggested giving a gift of chili peppers, she went to the garden. There, while she was working and picking vegetables, she was bitten by insects and left unpleasant red spots on her skin. She decided to leave the peppers on the balcony so that the strong smell would not disturb the girls in her room. And then in the morning this pepper was brought to the classroom. the main character asks what happened next. None of the students wanted to try the peppers and complained about the unpleasant aroma of the vegetable. One of the main character's friends said that he had already had breakfast and did not want to risk eating something like that. The hero thinks that Shin-Yuchu burst into tears because of this. He looks at the girl who is sitting alone in the corner of the audience. She doesn't say anything and just looks down. There are no students near her. She also scratches her arm, which was bitten by insects while working in the garden. The teacher enters the office and tells everyone to take their seats and is about to start classes. The main character says that he is forced to slightly delay the start of the couple. He stands in front of the audience and prepares to address the group. Dozens of eyes are fixed on him. Shin-Yuchu, still upset, looks at him with uncertain eyes. The main character approaches a plate of chili peppers and opens it. He looks inside the bowl for a couple of seconds and doesn't say anything. All students closely monitor his actions. He takes one pepper from the plate with his hands and puts it in his mouth, and begins to chew. Shin-Yuchu looks at him while he eats it. Surprise at the elder's action is visible on her face. The main character continues to chew vegetables with a loud crunch. He then says that they are very tasty. He holds out a bowl and invites Ian to try them, to which the guy agrees. Students begin to eat peppers. They speak positively about their taste, and say that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Other students come up and start eating them along with the others. Shin-Yuchu blushes as he looks at what is happening. She continues to look at the head girl and the rest of the students, who are devouring food, and gradually ceases to be upset. Students say that such a tasty dish could be sold. The others agree with this. They call the girls over and say that this is a rare opportunity to try something unusual. Shin-Yuchu begins to cry, but this time from happiness. She wipes away tears with her hand as students eat her vegetables.